Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. While we are waiting for the other participants to come in and join us, I would like to request everyone to please use our chat box and kindly type in your location. Where are you right now? So we can recognize who are coming from different parts of the Philippines and also other parts of the world, because we have our participants coming from different parts of the world, which is in Thailand and also in Abu Dhabi. So kindly type in our chat box, where are you right now? So we can recognize your place. Thank you so much. All right, we have from Nagoya, Japan, Miss Princess Suzuki. So we also have from Lucena, of course, from Sariaya, Quezon. Good morning, everyone. From Marinduque, thank you. Good morning, Miss. All right, and teacher Melanie from Thailand. Sawadee Kap. Good morning from Mauban, Quezon. All right. Just keep on coming, keep on chatting on our chat box. So for to recognize your location, where are you right now? And we're very much happy to see you and joining us today as we are having a different kinds of time location, right? All right. So let's start our program. To our professor, Dr. Michael Zandino Andre, to our guest speakers, Dr. Marlon Bantilas, Dr. Sharon Villaverde, and Dr. Joey Andrew Santos, and to our dear international participants from different parts of the Philippines, Thailand, Abu Dhabi, Japan, and the world. A wonderful day to each and every one of you. And welcome to the webinar entitled Language in Context, Elevating ESL Teaching Skills in Literary Criticism and Linguistics. First of all, we would like to introduce ourselves. My name is Miguel Heneblaso, and with me,
Grace Big.
right, so Miss Grace Big is my co-host for today's webinar, and we will be your moderators. Okay. And before we get started, I would like to remind everyone about our webinar house rules. And I'm inviting everyone to please watch this video. All right, there you have it for our webinar house rules. And I hope everyone get the message of our expectation check that this will be an amazing webinar. So without further ado, let's start our program with an invocation to be followed by the singing of the Philippine national anthem and the Sacred Heart College hymn.
Lead me, Lord, lead me by the hand and help me face the rising sun. Comfort me through all the pain that life may bring. There's no other hope that I can lean upon. Lead me, Lord, lead me all my life. Walk by me, Walk by me across the lonely roads that I may face. Take my arms and let your hand show me the way. Show the way to live inside your heart all my days, all my life. You are my light, you're the lamp upon my feet. All the time, my Lord, I need you there. You are my light, I cannot live alone. Let me stay by your guiding love all through my life. Lead me, Lord. Lead me, Lord. Even though at times I'd rather go alone my way, help me take the right direction. Take your road. Lead me, Lord, and never leave my side. All my days, all my life. You are my light, you're the lamp upon my feet. All the time, my Lord, I need you there. You are my light, I cannot live alone. Let me stay by your guiding love all through my life. You are my light, you're the lamp upon my feet. All the time, my Lord, I need you there. I just cannot live alone. Let me stay by your guiding love all through my life, all through my days. So lead me, oh Lord. Lead me.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
And to welcome every one of you, and let's have for our opening remarks, let's have Dr. Michael Sandino, T. Andre, Assistant Professor, Sacred Heart College of Lucena Incorporated.
Thank you very much, Sir Migs. Good morning to all our participants in this webinar, to our speakers, Dr. Arl Pontillas, and our speakers later, Dr. Sharon Villaverde and Dr. Joey Santos. So, welcome to the webinar organized by the Master of Arts in Education major in English students from Sacred Heart College, which aims to share knowledge about literary criticism and linguistics, particularly phonology and morphology. This webinar was conceptualized by our students from Sacred Heart College to share and for everyone to be able to understand how these concepts may be applied in the classroom and in real life. So in this webinar, we hope that each participant would be enlightened regarding the topics and how could we as language enthusiasts better enhance our skills in teaching literature and um, phonology and morphology as one of the cornerstones in um, teaching grammar and linguistics. So, without further ado, I hope that everyone would have their ears and hearts open as we absorb the sharings to be given to us by our esteemed speakers this morning. With that, welcome po and mabuhay.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Or Sir Dino, our beloved professor. So, yes, let's now proceed to our icebreaker to be led by Mr. John Paul of Siena.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Before we start our webinar, we would like to have a simple game first. Allow me to share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen na po?
Yes, po, sir.
Okay. So I would like to ask Ma'am Deverly Frago to assist me in monitoring the answer of our participants. Ano po, everybody is welcome po dito sa game na to. Okay, so it's game time. For our game, are you ready? So the title of our game is Memory Game. Okay, and for our memory game essentials, number 1, photographic memory. Number 2, eye speed. Number 3, see and spot. And number 4, strategic thinking. So this is our game mechanics. The game master will flash 10 pictures for 10 seconds. And then after flashing the pictures, you will be asked random questions which is relevant in the details of the picture. So type your answers in the chat box of our meeting room. And the first player who will answer correctly will receive 1 point. So those points you will get will be summed up, and the one who will have the highest accumulated scores will have or will receive our game prize. Okay?
Excuse me, Sir JP. I
Yes,
think
po,
you
sir.
need to show your the slides. We're seeing you we can see the outline slides.
You
Can
cannot see the
yes,
slides,
yes.
po, sir.
Can you
Okay.
present it?
Okay, wait, po, sir. Okay na po, sir.
Mm, sir, you can use the click the slideshow, sir. This is not in a slideshow mode.
Is it okay na po?
I think you are in the loading. So you can present it again one more time.
Is it okay na po, sir? Can everyone see my slideshow po?
All right. Yes, we can see the game
Thank you
mechanic.
po. Thank you po. So I will repeat the game mechanics po. The game master will flash 10 pictures. Will flash pictures for 10 seconds. After flashing the picture, you will be asked random questions which is relevant to the details in the picture. Type your answer in the chat box of the meeting room, and then the first player who will answer correctly will receive 1 point. Those points you will get will be summed up, and the one who has the highest accumulated scores will receive our game prize. Okay? So let's begin po. Picture number 1. We have the timer. Okay. So for picture number 1, the question is, what is the most dominant color in Miguel's toys? So you have 5 seconds to chat your or to enter your answers. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Time's up. For our answer, the answer is blue color. Okay? Okay, so this picture is just a dry run or a trial. So let the game begin. Okay? For image number 1. Okay, time's up. For our question, how many person is wearing eyeglasses? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, time's up for image number 1. The answer is only one person. Okay? Okay, next po. Image number 2. Time's up. For our question, according to the picture, how many teeth does Patrick have? 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Time's up. Okay, the answer is 0 or none. Okay, for image number 3. Okay, time's up. What electronic device is the orange monster holding? You may type your answers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and time's up. Our answer is, okay, it's radio. Okay, for image number 4, the blonde hair baby boy is sitting with a baby boy with what hair color? Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the answer is green color. Okay, so we have image number 5. For image number 5, okay, time's up. Question: from the 4 characters, how many wears apron? Okay, you have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, time's up. And the answer is only one character. Okay, image number 6. Okay, time's up. The question is, what is the color of the man's necktie? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and the answer reveal, it's pink. Okay, for next image, image number 7. Okay, time's up. Question: how many umbrellas are there beside the door? Okay, time's up. The answer is 2 umbrellas. Okay, and for image number 8, we have from the movie Boss Baby. For our question, how many embroidered flower or flowers in the chair are visible in the image? 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Answer reveal, it's only 2. Okay. For image number 9, we have from the movie Wreck-It Ralph. Okay, time's up. For our question, whose video game character's name can be seen clearly on the wall? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, for our answer reveal, the answer is Pac-Man. Okay. Next, number 10, image number 10, last one. From the TV show Courage the Cowardly Dog. Okay, time's up. For our question, how many layers of drawers does the counter behind Muriel has? Okay, everyone is entering their answer. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Answer reveal. We have 3 layers of drawers. Okay. Ma'am Dev, excuse me po, do we have a winner already?
Meron na, sir.
Meron na po. Okay po.
Meron naman po.
Okay, so sino po yung ating winner?
Yung may pinakamadami pong answer na tama, si Miss Princess Suzuki po.
Okay, si Miss Princess Suzuki po. Ano? Okay, congratulations, Ma'am Princess Suzuki. Your prize will be given after this webinar. Okay? And then if we have a tiebreaker, this is for the tiebreaker. I'm just going to show you this one. Okay. So for our tiebreaker, what is the color of the Vespa? And the answer is red. Okay. So thank you everyone for participating. I hope you enjoyed our icebreaker. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Sir John Paul. And on my part, you really have broken the ice in my mind. So we do hope on behalf of the students of Maed English in Sacred Heart and the rest of the committee of our event today. We hope that Sir John Paul's presentation and icebreaker really have broken the ice in your mind. So I hope that everyone is ready to listen and learn from our respective or respected speakers from different parts of the Philippines and the world. So welcome to our international webinar. Again, let me emphasize that this will focus on literary criticism and linguistics. Okay, so to give us officially our first speaker for today's webinar, let me call Ma'am Rothiel Dacpano to introduce our first speaker.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Honey. All right, let me present to you our first speaker. Our first speaker is a full-time college instructor of Camarines Sur Polytechnic Colleges, teaching language courses such as purposive communication, English as a second language, language research, and linguistics. Currently, he is the designated program chair of AB English Language Studies in the college. He was also the former moderator of their school publication. He finished his first doctorate at the University of St. Anthony in 2018 with distinction in the research output and excellence in oral defense. Currently, he is pursuing another doctorate in applied linguistics at the De La Salle University, Manila. In 2015, he earned his master's degree in English at the University of Nueva Cáceres with honors, and in 2012, he graduated as the only cum laude at the University of St. Anthony with a bachelor's degree in communication. He won various outstanding student searches in the region. He was named as one of the outstanding public secondary school students of Camarines Sur, sponsored by DepEd CamSur in 2008. Top 1 awardee in the search for the 10 outstanding students of Bicol 2012, awarded by Ako Bicol Party List, SHED, and PACSA. And a national qualifier in the search for the 10 outstanding students of the Philippines. He has presented and published his research papers in different colloquiums and referred journals. Moreover, he is also a member and officer of several research professional organizations. In 2021, he was named as one of the outstanding educators given by ETCOR International Organization. It is with great pleasure and honor to present to you Dr. Marlon S. Pontillas. Let us give him a big round of virtual applause.
Good morning everyone! Isang maganda at mapagpalang umaga sa inyong lahat. Good morning everyone to our MC. Maraming salamat for the kind introduction. To a very good friend of mine, Dr. Dino, thank you very much for inviting me in your class. And to all the organizers and the participants in this webinar, thank you very much for inviting me. So my topic is about phonetics and phonology, the foundation for teaching speaking. However, I just did some focus, no. Later on, I will be teaching, or I will be focusing on a certain aspect, because phonetics and phonology, these are very broad topics in linguistics. So I hope you can learn something at the end of our talk. So this is just a very brief webinar, or I mean the topic that I will be talking. I hope that I can just finish on time. I think I will be given like an hour to talk about my topic. And thank you so much, Doc Dino. Thank you very much for inviting me again. So I'll be sharing my screen now. All right, so good morning. So my topic for today, I will be discussing, or my lecture is about teaching speaking through phonics. So instead of phonology and phonetics, I tried to find a more interesting topic, which is more about phonics, because I think we can phonics, or teaching phonics, can actually be integrated in our ESL classrooms, regardless of the level, may it be in elementary or in high school or in college. So I think this is very, very important right now that we teach our students about phonics to improve their speaking skills. Okay. So once again, I am Arl, and I am your resource speaker for today. Ayan. Sir Miguel, thank you very much for the message, by the way. Is the one who invited me, through through email. Maraming salamat. Okay. So, what is phonics? So this is the first question. I know you have an idea of what is this all about, since you are a math and English student, right? I don't know if who among you here are already graduating. Are you just all starting graduate school students, or are you already on your thesis writing? Because if you are in your thesis writing, I think this is a how I contextualize my talk will actually give you a glimpse. You might be interested about this topic. No, so I don't know if you're already in your thesis writing, but whether you are in or not, I hope that the topic that I will be, or the main topic that I will be discussing for today, is all about can actually give you so much benefit from this, especially if you are in the thesis writing. Okay, so the definition of phonics, according to Literary Trust, it is a way of teaching children how to read and write. Okay, it helps children hear, identify, and use different sounds that distinguish one word from another in the English language. So I think this is not just only in the English language, but even in other languages, Filipino language. I think the teacher right now, especially for elementary, they are also doing it. This is how they teach their students, especially for pronunciation and speaking. I don't know if there are like elementary teachers here from kinders to grade 3. So I think this is the way you teach right now. I remember when I was still in elementary, or when we were still in elementary, our teacher teaches us in a very different way, diba? Like how we used how we learn how to read and pronounce. I think there is no so much emphasis on phonics. So I think they just have to illustrate what an A, what a B sound is all about, without emphasis on the sound. But scholars have said that it will be a very um, it will be an effective way if our students will be learning through sounds. So if you are already mothers or fathers, or if you're already parents, so I think this is how the way you teach your children. But during our time, 'di ba? Hindi naman ganito yung pamamaraan ng mga teachers natin, and even our parents. So I remember when I was in, like, before kindergarten, my parent my mom, meron siyang ano no, yung parang folder, naalala ko. Tapos nakalagay lang yun na A, B, C, o ganito ang A niyan. O, diba? This is how you write and this is how you pronounce A, B, something like that. But right now, the emphasis is more on the sound. So that's why it's more on the phonics, okay? So understanding phonics will also help children know which letters to use when they are writing words. So that's why our LM teachers would say, okay, please write the word, the sound b, b, b. Okay, and our children or the students will actually distinguish that it, or will know that it's letter B. Okay, there is an emphasis of the sound b or B. Okay, so this is about phonics. So phonics involves matching the sounds of spoken English with individual letters or group of letters. For example, the sound K can be as k, sh, or something like that. Okay, so this can be, this has different variations of the sound K. Okay, it can be k and K. So that's it. That's how you teach your students with regard to the differentiation, or how you differentiate the sounds, because one letter can have a lot of sounds. So teaching children to blend the sounds of letters together helps them decode unfamiliar or unknown words by sounding them out. So like say for example, when a child is taught the sounds for the letters T, P, A, and S, they can start to build up the word tap, right? Like t, t, ah, ah. Okay, so they can formulate the word tap. Okay, and if you will be combining another letter, like if it's a plural, like taps, or you can have the word pat, say ah, ah, t, t, t. We are doing it in that way, yung parang paulit-ulit, so that there will be a register for the children or for our students that this is the sound of this of letter P. It's p, p, and then the A, and letter A, it's ah, ah, ah. Then the sound for letter T, it can be t, 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 pat. Or if you can do it in a plural form, so you can form the word pats and sat. Okay. So this is all about phonics. So remember, this is how the way we teach children how to read and write, especially right now. This is now the emerging trend of ESL teaching. Okay, I don't know if you have an experience teaching different nationalities to like say, for example, Chinese and Koreans. So just to give you a heads up, like before I became or before I applied for a teaching post in a university. So I used to become an EFL teacher for Chinese and Koreans. And during our training with the online companies, this is how they really want us to master the phonics, because English is actually their foreign language. Chinese people or Chinese students, their English is their L3 or L4, something like that. Compared here in the Philippines, English is our second language. It's an ESL. We are in an ESL country. Okay, so I remember we had this kind of training, like 2 weeks of a training regarding phonics, because we are teaching kids most of the time. It's more of kids. So this is how we are trained how to teach kids, because majority of them, they are in the level 0 of using English language. So we really have to start from the scratch. So phonics is somehow a very, very effective tool or effective teaching way for them to at least master, or not really master, to understand the English language. Okay. So the question now is how teaching phonics can improve the speaking skills of our language learners. Now, I asked you a while ago who among you here are in the thesis writing, because uh, the main topic that I will be talking about here is lifted from a journal article. Okay, this is based on an empirical study. Okay, so I tried to look for a perfect material with regard to how can to answer this question, that how really teaching phonics can improve the speaking skills of our language learners. So in the Philippine setting, even though English is our second language, there are a lot of issues. There are a lot of challenges the way we teach speaking to our students. So one of my published article titled "Reducing the Public Speaking Anxiety," you may look into that paper, "Reducing the Public Speaking Anxiety of ESL, of college students through Pops Speak." So I used an intervention there about the title is Pops Speak. So before I used that intervention, I was able to find out that even college students, they have difficulty with regard to speaking skills. They have a very, very high anxiety. Some of my students, they have a moderate to high speaking anxiety. And what more in the elementary and in the high school level, especially for junior high school and senior high school. So I believe that some of you here are teaching in the senior high school, if you're handling oral communication. Dati kasi, di ba, the oral communication is in college. Yeah, but right now binaba na siya sa senior high school. So what we have right now in college is the purposive communication. So even though that even though na hindi niyo sabihin, I know that you find it so difficult or challenging on your part to how can you really improve the speaking skills of your learners, right? So especially here in our province, in our region, Bicol, no, we are near in the Visayas region, or yeah. So meron talaga kaming mga issues with regard to the pronunciation, the speaking. Okay, so the issues that we usually face or we encounter personally is that, some of my students, um they have difficulties with regard to differentiating the words e and e. Okay, e and e. Okay, like bed. Okay, so some of them will say bid. Okay, kasi medyo Bisaya na nga, parang ganon. So although we are not in the Visayas region, no, but these are some of the mistakes. Okay, these are some of the errors that my students really encounter in my class. So sometimes the e and e, like o and u, o and u, no, o u. Kasi sa amin in our, if you will be looking, no, linguistically speaking, Bicol region, we are more on the u sound, no, like yung our orthography, actually, to be more specific in our place, more on the u. Yung parang instead the bobo, okay, sabi mo bubu, parang ganon. Like phonics, they will say phonics. Okay, may mga ganong issues. Okay, so yeah, I was able to triangulate that finding, no, because even our top graduates find it so difficult for them to apply for certain jobs, like say for example in a call center company. So for call center companies, they are really more after in your speaking prowess, your speaking skills. So as much as possible, there should be a minimal errors or like pronunciation lapses. Tapos tinanong ko yung friend ko, no? Sabi, he's actually in Manila. Sabi niya, you know what, Arl, I have a lot of good Bicolano or Bicolana applicants. No, they are really somehow they can use English language. It's just that during training, so during training, the most common errors that the most common challenge that they really face is that um yun nga yung sinabi ko sa inyo, they interchange o and u, b, and v. Okay, so for example, a bag, so sometimes they will say it as vag, ganon. Flower vase, like flower vase, instead of the f sound, no, they will say it flower, no, flower base, no, flower base. The v becomes b, okay, flower base, okay, so something like that. All right. So I don't know in your region 4A, in Calabarzon, if you also experience that to your students. But here in our region, because we are already in a province, we are in a province, so sometimes it's more on the effect of the regional dialect that we have, because our mother tongue, our first language is Bicol. So that's why these things are really so evident. These things are really so evident to us. Okay, so there. So these are some of the challenges that I encounter personally in teaching speaking for it's either high school or in college, because I also used to teach in the high school level. Okay, so how about in your region, in region 4A, do you also experience such like pronunciation lapses, like that one, the E and I, the B and V, the P and F? Anyone? Anyone who would like to share? Sir Migs, you open your cam. Sir Migs, what year level are you teaching right now?
Well, Doc, I'm teaching ESL. I'm currently living and working here in Bangkok, Thailand.
Oh, in Bangkok, Thailand. How about for Thai students?
The S sounds
Yeah. Uh-huh.
they pronounce as sa, not S.
Yes.
Sa.
Mhm.
That's why they will pronounce like spaghetti, like that.
Yeah, the spaghetti. Yes.
Then the R and the L,
The
they
L.
don't have the R in their alphabets. That's why.
Yeah.
So every
Mhm,
time
mhm.
that they will have the beginning sounds of R, it will change to be L.
The L sound.
Yeah, the L
Okay.
sounds, and some sort of like that.
Yeah, because sometimes it's on the orthography of a certain place, right? So I think that's the reason why. Okay, thank you so much, Sir Meads. So you're now in Thailand.
Yes.
Sawadee ka.
Sorry, Cap.
Sawadee ka. Yeah. So I think I've been there like twice. So Thailand, especially Bangkok, is a very, very beautiful place to live. Okay. Thank you so much, Sir Migs. I called you Sir Migs. No. So for that. Yeah, in Thailand, that's true. So in Thailand, before during my first the first time I went there in Thailand was when I represented Philippines in a certain ASEAN convention. And you know what? It's like when I go there, it's like I tried to speak to, in the airport, like I'm actually looking for a comfort for for a comfort room. Okay, for a comfort room. So I tried to ask a utility man, like, excuse me, may I know where is the comfort room here? And they really can't understand me. Yeah, they really can't understand me. Like, they were like, what are you trying to say? Comfort room, because I said, can I use a comfort room here? And then my friend told me that, Arl, this is not an English country. This is not Philippines. You try to you try to minimize or try to slow down your pronunciation. Use more appropriate words. Like when I say, where is the bathroom? Where's the bathroom? And then there we go. He was able to understand me. That it was like, there, there, something like that. Okay. So these things are really evident because English is our English, especially in Asia, Southeast Asia. English can actually be our second language or our foreign language. Okay, I think in Thailand, English is their foreign language. I think it's only in Singapore and in the Philippines where English is our second language. Okay, so somehow we can speak English fluently compared to our ASEAN countries, our neighboring ASEAN countries. But still, there are rooms for improvement for teaching speaking, because this is actually one of the problems. Scholars have dwelled into, like, how can we teach speaking to our students? Okay, so with that one, I found a certain article. Okay, this is actually the central topic that I will be using in my presentation, from the paper of Ghazali, 2019. So I don't know if you were able to read or you were able to discuss that in your MAED class, but this is just a simple study. So if you are in your thesis writing, you may replicate this one, because this is in the Indonesian context. Okay, this is in the Indonesian context. So you might be so interested to contextualize or to replicate the paper of Ghazali 2019 in your country, or in your place or in your workplace. Okay, so the title of the paper is about developing phonics material to improve the spoken English of Indonesian tertiary students. Okay, so let's see in the paper or in the study of Ghazali, how does phonics material help improve the spoken English of these students, these EFL students. Okay, so just short background of the study. So for English teachers at kindergarten or preschool level, phonics subject is the bread and butter of daily work. That's why I really have a high regard to kindergarten teachers or preschool teachers, because they really lay the foundation of the different macro skills of language, especially for speaking, reading, writing. So in some other schools or other areas, they really have phonics subject, because this is the main foundation of everything. Okay, that's why it's tagged as the bread and butter of daily work. So I really have a strong high regard to these LM teachers, to the kindergarten teachers, because they patiently teach our students, our LM students, to develop their macro skills, especially for speaking and writing. Yeah. So traditionally, according to ARI 2003, are traditionally regarded as a rudiment tool for teaching literacy to children. Okay, so phonics is a subject that teaches the relationship between the grapheme, okay, and the phoneme, the sound and the letter, the relationship in order to decode a word for reading or writing. So for phonics, again, the main aim is that our students should be able to identify the the sound of the letter, that when they have seen that letter, they will be able to identify what sound is that. Okay, so by learning the basic rules of phonics, right, children are expected to be able to start reading simple words. So if you are an LM teacher, or if you are teaching in an online school, okay, so you know that the phonics is actually this is how we teach our students, because definitely they are in the foundation stage, meaning they are just on the simple word formation, like a 3-letter word or a 4-letter word. Okay, so say for example, by knowing how the consonant M is sounded, and after learning how to sound the short vowel A in an, they are then combined to form M plus an equals man. Okay, so if how you teach it to your students, like I remember, so say for example, Miguel or Migs is my student. Okay, Miguel, please repeat after me. Say and then Miguel will say like that one. You will do it for so many times. I think in Thailand you do it to your students as well. And then you say an. Yeah, you really have to be like that, especially in the online EFL teaching, especially in the computer mediated communication type. Okay, so you do it. And Miguel, please say man, man. Can I have it again, please? You will do this kind of TPR. What's TPR? Total physical response. These are the gestures that you have to do. So that's how you teach actually phonics, especially for online students. Plus an, it's man. Miguel, say man. Then Miguel say man, something like that. And then there we go. This is how you do it. This is the routine that you really have to do it for all over and over again until the students will try to grasp a lot of words that when M is combined with and sound, then they form the word man. When they encounter b b plus ag, bag, say bag, then they will say bag, something like that. And you do it for so many times. Okay, sometimes, during my first stint in the online teaching, like, my parents, especially my mom, would actually tell me that, hey, Arl, are you really crazy of what you're doing? Are you really sure what you're doing? As I said, yes, because this is how we should have to teach our students. Okay, this is how I teach my students with regard to pronunciation. Okay, so the writer also, or the author, also teaches English conversation in a tertiary institution in Indonesia. So in the course of listening to the student's speech for the past few years, the writer detected several pronunciation errors or mistakes, which perhaps could be considered as typical for English speakers in Indonesia. So what triggered the author to write this paper or to develop this kind of material is that in Indonesia, we all know that Indonesia is an EFL country. Their English is a foreign language. So since she is a teacher in the college level, she was able to find out that there are a lot of several mispronunciation errors or mistakes. So, well, these are so typical for non-native speakers, especially for EFL countries. So that motivated the author to create a study or to write a paper regarding this. Okay. So in previous researches, the writer had compiled those errors and did an error analysis on them in the study of Gozali 2017. So one of the conclusions derived from the research was that there might be some benefits in teaching basic phonics to the students. Not only the study of Gozala 2017, but even other scholars would actually prove that if you will be integrating phonics materials in your class, definitely it will help your students to improve their speaking skills, especially their pronunciation. So in order to dispel the more common pronunciation mistakes that arise from negative transfer of Bahasa Indonesia. So remember that English is not really their main language. It's only their foreign language. Okay. So when it comes to pronunciation, it was revealed that some words containing the phonetic components like o and u, like such as those present in house, ow, ow, and build, e, 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 b, e, yield, respectively, were unintelligible to the native speakers. Okay, sometimes we lose our patience to our students. Like, why is it that you can't really master that? It's because English is not our first language. Okay, to all to all the language teachers here, I know the sentiments that you feel that sometimes it's so frustrating that our students cannot get it. But it's because that these sounds are unintelligible to them. Like in the normal conversation, in the native speaking, okay, in the native language that they are having or that they are speaking, these sounds are not really present in their lingua franca or in their first language or their mother tongue. That's why it's unintelligible to them. That's why when you ask them to pronounce those words, there will be an error. It should be given. They will be accurate it inaccurately. They will inaccurately speak that. Okay. So all of the above students gave some inklings that Indonesian students, even at tertiary level, might benefit from some explicit phonetic awareness training. So the author was able to incorporated the phonics material in her class, even though it's already in the college level, so that the speaking skills of her students will be improved. So later on, we will be discussing how does it somehow improve, no? So how does developing a material, a phonics material, could actually improve the speaking skills of these Indonesian students. But what she did was actually an explicit phonetic awareness training about this. So the writer wanted to compile some basic phonics materials based on the frequency committed errors, which are also most likely to cause incomprehension to the ears of native speakers of Indonesian tertiary students. Okay, so the phonics materials will be then taught explicitly to the students as a kind of enrichment. So that is the intervention. Okay, that's the intervention that she did. So there is an enrichment that she did. She integrated phonics materials to her class, to her English class in the tertiary level. Well, if you are working in the Department of Education, um, I suppose if you're a master teacher, say for example, you are required to create to have your, what do you call this, action research, okay, your AR, your action research, especially for DepEd. So this can actually be a good study, okay? This can be actually a good paper that you can make, or you can consider, like how do like improving the speaking skills. Okay, I will give you some topic like improving the speaking skills of grade 11 senior high school students in, say for example, Lucena National High School through phonetic materials. Okay, and you can actually make an action research out of it. So, di ba kasi in the action research, what is more emphasized is the intervention, like ano yung intervention na ginawa mo doon to improve that one. So phonics materials is actually a good intervention that you can actually have. Okay, so you may want to consider this as a topic for your action research or even in your thesis writing. Okay, in your thesis writing, if you are really so interested about phonetics or phonics or phonology as a topic. Okay, so again, the researcher was able to develop a phonetics material and tested it into her class if it's effective or not. So in the latter part of my presentation, you will see, does it really improve the spoken English of her students or not? Okay. So what are the materials? Okay, what are the materials that she used here? Okay. So the instruments used were a reading text, okay, a voice recorder, okay, and recording playback. Phonics materials to be taught, so there should be a material itself and a simple survey form distributed at the end of the research. So this research period spanned only for like 7 weeks or like one or almost 2 months. Done within a once a week English conversation class of 90 minutes each. So the participants of this study were an intact class of 8 college level students who were enrolled in level 2 of the ECC. Okay, so if you will be doing this in your class, so say for example, if you're teaching oral and speech communication, okay, there is like oral and speech communication. Tama ba? Oral and speech communication. Oral communication in context. I'm so sorry. Who among you here are senior high school teachers? I forgot the exact name, but I think it's more an oral communication in context, OCC, if I'm not mistaken. So you can actually replicate this one. Okay, you can actually replicate this one in your oral communication class. Because in senior high school, the only speech class that the only speech class that they have is the OCC, the oral communication in context. So if you are teaching in the senior high school level, then you can integrate it, this kind of paper. You may replicate that. So I think the OCC or the oral communication in context has like 20 weeks for that one. Uh-huh. Yes, thank you, Ma'am Renalyn. That's oral communication in context. Before that, speech com in college, right? During our time. Because we are all products of, I think, of the basic ed. The old curriculum, the OCC. So if you can integrate this one, if you plan to replicate the study and integrate this in your OCC class, then this is better because you can have it for more than 7 weeks. You can have like 20 weeks, right? Because I think in a certain semester for senior high school, I think that's semestral basis. So you can do it like for 16 to 20 weeks. Okay. So at least you will see the effectiveness of a certain material, whether it is really effective or not. Okay. But in the study of Ghazali, so it was only like a 7-week period. Okay. So let's see later on if on that 7-week period, what was the improvement or the impact of the phonics material in improving the spoken English of these students. Okay, so a copy of the reading text with highlight, I will be presenting that in the next slide, in the form of boldface given to words to see the phonetic emphasis. So naturally, the copy given to the students did not have such highlight. So it's only the researcher, the teacher researcher who has the copy of the highlighted material. She's just on her activity. These are the sounds that she will be given emphasis, whether the students were able to articulate or were able to pronounce those sounds correctly. So let's try to see it. So the title of the reading text for phonetic test is Longing for Freedom. Like Jimmy is taking a break from his work, A and or. He looks at his watch, he still has 1 hour, ow, 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 okay, before the next meeting. He is hungry and he opens his lunch box. It is full of fruits, ooh, 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 because he is on a diet. While taking his lunch, he opens his coffee table book. It has drawings, oh, 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 of beautiful scenery, silent C, mountains, ow, and uh, tins, and heavenly island, I. He sighs, I, and closes his eyes. How much he longs for a holiday, A, okay? He can't wait, A, for June to come when he will go to Mexico. He has to pay, A, a lot for it, but it doesn't matter. Suddenly, his phone rings. He quickly answers it. Sir, it's from his boss. He has to see him now. He doesn't know what it is all about. Ow, ow. So those are the emphasis of the author or the researcher, whether the students were able to correctly pronounce those words. Okay, so she used this kind of reading text, okay, a phonetic test. You know, originally when she asked her students to read this, these highlighted words are not given emphasis though. Okay. So what happened? So during the first week of class, a copy of the reading text was given to the students and each one was asked to read the text aloud. So on the first week of the class, each of them just read or they were asked to read the text aloud. So permission was asked from the students to record. So remember, you have to seek permission from your students. So this is part of research ethics. Okay. Permission was asked from the students to record their speech and assurance was given that the recordings were to be used solely for research purposes. Then on the second week of class, so in the following 2 weeks, the recordings were analyzed to see which words were pronounced inaccurately by the students. So since she has this kind of class recording, she was able to point out which of these are correctly pronounced and mispronounced. So out of the 8 students who were, there were 7 who wrongly pronounced the long vowel I in the word sigh. 5 made mistakes in the exception to the long vowel t, mountain, okay? And 4 said the silent W in answer. Maybe they said answer, okay? It's answer, okay? Inaccurately. So apart from these, a few students were inaccurate in the pronunciation of the words longing, okay? Box ending X, box. Maybe they will just say buck, box, not really x. Drawing the long vowel out, and scenery, the silent C, okay? So when you do it, so after the what she did on the second week of the class, on the following 2 weeks, she was able to identify which among these words based on the material were mispronounced incorrectly. So what happened next? So following those findings, so phonetics materials were now developed. Since the author was able to detect that these are the common mispronounced words of my students, so this will be the materials that I have to do. focusing on this kind of sounds in order to address the above pronunciation inaccuracies. So in the next 3 classes, 2 phonics materials per week were selected and taught explicitly to the students. So there, the intervention comes in. So they were then taught the word is supposed to be pronounced as sai and not sig. For example, they were then given examples of other words containing I that are spoken in the same way, such as hi and thai. Okay, similar procedure was followed to other phonetic sounds. So it was observed during those enrichment sessions that perhaps lasted no longer than 5 minutes. Some students appreciated this information and it was like an enlightenment for them. So it was an enrichment. So after the class or before the class ends, the teacher will be doing, or the teacher researcher integrated this session to address this kind. So she used her phonetics material to address this kind of issues. Okay. So on the last day of class, a brief survey was given out to the students to ask them if they could remember the materials taught in the phonics lesson, and if affirmative, to write them. So out of the 8 students, 3 answered in the negative and the rest, they are in an affirmative. From the latter, 3 students wrote that they could remember the phonics lesson about the silent C, like in the word scenery and science. That, and 2 could recall the silent W, okay, in answer. So that student was able to realize that I should not be pronouncing the answer word. It should not be answer. It's an answer. Then right and wrong. So the W, the w sound should not be pronounced. So there is like an impact of the, there is like an impact, or there is an improvement with regard to their pronunciation, especially the way they pronounce, from the misspelled pronunciation to this to the improvement that they've had on the last class. Okay. So, however, there are limitations of the study. So it was said that although this simple study lacks the rigor of empirical research as such, it might have laid the foundation for future works targeted at improving the accuracy of the spoken English of Indonesian adult students. That's why, for me personally, 7 weeks is very limited to really address all the pronunciation issues leading to this to the speaking skills of the students. Hence, if you will be replicating the study, it will be better if you will be doing it in a longer time. So say, for example, in OCC, you have like 20 weeks for that one. So you can have it like for the whole semester. You can explicitly teach your phonics material for like 20 weeks and see if there is a significant difference about that. Okay, so there should be a more exhaustive study involving cross-linguistic analysis, which is needed to compile a fuller list of phonetic and phonological materials that are more relevant for Indonesians, as was done in a Japanese study by Saito 2014, which gathered the materials by surveying several experienced English teachers. So when you will be doing your material, it should be validated, it should be well crafted, it should be based on a certain, on a certain foundation. You have to target specific learning targets for the materials that you will be doing. And you know what, validating a material is somehow challenging, especially in our context. But if you really want to achieve an accurate findings for that one, then you really have to undergo the process. Okay. So lastly, this study also indirectly supports the continuing importance of contrastive analysis, or the contrastive rhetoric in pronunciation teaching. Okay. So it was like recommended also that there should be a contrastive analysis between the first language, the L1 and the L2, of 2 linguistic aspects that is useful in the pedagogical setting for this one. Okay, So the main conclusion and recommendation of this paper is that it was observed that students appreciated the information and many, when asked in a survey, could recall the phonics lesson taught. So this has led to the conclusion that basic phonics lessons may prove to be useful to improve the speaking accuracy of the students. So if you're thinking that phonics is only for elementary, no. So phonics lessons can actually be integrated even in the higher level, especially for senior high school and college levels. These are good interventions. These are good pedagogical things that you can actually integrate for your ESL classes. So those lessons are short, only 5 to 10 minutes in duration, and are made up of phonic sounds that are most needed for Indonesian speakers. So that's why I am encouraging you guys and girls that you try to develop this kind. You can replicate the study and then see if this kind of material or this kind of intervention will also be helpful in our setting. So the phonics materials gathered in the study could serve as the basis, again, for a future and more comprehensive compilation. Okay, so nevertheless, this research may just be the start of more rigorous studies in the future and to lay the foundation for more works in the area of English pronunciation, not only in Indonesia, but also in other countries. So yeah, one of the limitations of the study is that it has a small size of the number of participants. So maybe in your class, maybe you can also encourage other teachers to do the same. You can do it in a group action research, like the whole institution in your school will be doing it, so that you will have like more scientific findings for that one, because the number of participants is very important in research. Okay. So yeah, I was about to do this kind of activity, but I think we lack time. I think there are two more speakers for this one. So just a few takeaways from the study, like we can say that phonics materials or phonics lessons or teaching strategy can actually help our students with regard to their pronunciation and their speaking skills. And phonics is not only for speaking skills. Remember that whenever we teach English lessons to our students, these are not just only targeting a specific macro skill. So along with that, there will be other macro skills that will be targeted all along the way. And it's really interesting, as a researcher, that we make an impact to the lives of our students. So I am challenging everyone to do their research, to do their empirical study, may it be a classroom-based action research or a thesis, because somehow this will actually help our students to improve their language skills. So English is our second language. So even though that English is our second language, but still there are a lot of things that needs to be done for us to improve our improve the communication or communicative skills of our students. And I believe that developing phonics materials through the foundation of phonology and phonetics, this will be a great help regardless of the year level that they may in. Okay, so with that one, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you learned something from this one. So I'm very excited to those who will be replicating this paper. Okay, this may be a simple paper, but I hope you get an idea of what kind of paper that you will be doing if in case phonics or phonetics or phonology will be the topic of your study in your thesis or your action research. Right? So thank you very much, and maraming salamat po.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Pantillas, for your very rich and actually research-based presentation. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
so it has given me the idea, or it has emphasized to me the idea that we should not really be deceived by the orthography of the English language, because
Yeah.
how the words are spelled is not actually how those words should be sound or pronounced. Okay, so as what is reminded in our chat box, there would be a lot of 10-minute academic exchange for the participants, for anyone here in the Zoom meeting, to collaborate, ask us questions, raise queries to our speaker, and of course to make still our webinar interactive. Okay, so everyone is welcome to have additional inputs or to ask questions. Alright. Parang sila ay mesmerize pa sa iyong presentation, Dr. Puntillan, no? Na-speechless pa.
Thank you so much.
Anyone? Okay. Or what can we say to the presentation of Dr. Puntillas? What can we add if we have, if we can relate with what Dr. Puntillas had shared, had presented? If you are, some participants are maybe shy, you may type in our chat box your message, your question, if any.
Ma'am Hani, sorry, but can I just like take like few time, because I think the last part of my presentation is very important. It's actually a teaching strategy. Okay, if okay lang ba, no?
Okay.
So, in ESL classes, this is very important. This is what I have been doing, because thanks to Worldwide Link. Okay, so this is one of the ways I actually teach pronunciation to my students. Like you can do it through jazz chants or whatsoever. So this one is, I think, it's a very exciting. So you may also incorporate that into your class. Okay, madali lang, okay lang ba? Okay lang ba, Miss Honey? So that you can actually have a glimpse, or you may replicate this one. You may do it in your class.
Okay,
Ayan.
sir, sure.
Sige. Thank you very much. Sige, share ko lang yung screen ko ulit. Okay. I-share ko lang. I will share my screen for a while. Do you know that the sound like we will rock you, like the we will rock you, yeah. so as can you see my screen right now? Okay, so this is a lesson, like these are the mispronounced words of our Filipino students. Okay, like say for example the word accuracy. Okay, they will say it as accuracy, not accuracy. Okay, so in an ordinary setting, you say, okay, everyone, please say accuracy. Okay, parang ganun lang, no? But we can tweak it. We can make it a very exciting class. We can have a very very exciting class for that one, and students are actually so engaged and engrossed into this kind of topic. Okay, sige, try natin ha. So, ang gagawin ninyo is that you have ang materials ang gagawin ninyo is that you download the We Will Rock You instrumental, no? Like, rinig niyo ba? Yan. Kasi this one is like in the form of like pak, pak. Like, there is a register of the sound. Okay, ganyan. Yeah, parang pak. It's a bit like 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1. Okay, so like you can emphasize different words for this one. Okay, pwede nyo akong sabayan. You may unmute your mic. Ayan. So if you can open your camera, it's better. Okay, sige. Ano tayo? Okay, say for example, I will be your teacher. Okay, everyone, I would like you to open your camera and follow me. All right. Sige, let's do it. Come on. Everybody. Ngayon mo na. Warm up. We will rock you. Come on, rock you. We will rock you. Accuracy, accuracy, not accuracy, not accuracy. Almond, almond, not almond, not almond, almond, not almond. Appreciate, appreciate, not appreciate, not appreciate. The York side, the York side, not dioxide, not dioxide. Eligible, eligible, not eligible, not eligible. Come on. We will rock you. Come on. We will rock you. Do it one more time. Accuracy, accuracy. Almond, say almond. Appreciate. Okay, so something like that. Okay, so this is one thing that you can actually do it. Like you pronounce the word. Okay, so you can have a material like this one. You have to highlight the where is the intonation, where do they have to put stress so that they can pronounce the words correctly. Okay, so this is one of my teaching styles, or one of my teaching strategies when I teach pronunciation, which is also anchored about phonics, because I'm actually I'm very particular with the sound production of your students. And you know what? With that kind of activity, I think there will be a register for them na okay, it's almond. Parang ulit-ulitin nila yon, 'di ba? It's jazz chant, no? Almond. Hindi pala almond, it's almond. Okay? Or accuracy. Accuracy. Ulit-ulitin nila yon. So when they do it for so many times, like accuracy, they will eventually practice, or they will be able to have this kind of word register into their mind. It's accuracy, not accuracy pala. Okay. So something like that. All right, so that's one of my add-ons of my presentation. Okay, so let me stop my presentation. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Again, thank you so much, Dr. Marlon. Really, you are an energetic teacher, and I can imagine you inside the classroom that your students are really active, participative, and really engaged in your discussion. Okay, I can see that Sir Mix is raising his hand, so I think he has something to say. Sir Mix.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arl, for your very energetic presentation. And of course, I just would like to ask question, Dr. Arl, regarding with teaching, because you know that I already mentioned that I am teaching here in outside the Philippines, right?
Thailand, yes.
And yeah, I'm having some hard time actually, because I'm teaching phonetics also. And the challenges that I am facing right now is like, because they have their own accent, and they have their own cultural and like alphabetical, they have 46 actually. They have 46 alphabetical. So if we have like 20, right? They have 46. Not included the vowel sounds. Not include the vowel sounds. So it's hard for me to teach them like how the proper pronunciation it is. So my question here, Dr. Al, is like, if that will be the case for our children or for our students, that they having this kind of different kinds of alphabets, how we could uplift, or how we could like adopt their culture than the pronunciations with regards to teaching the phonetics.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Sir Mix, for that. So, well, I do remember one of the concepts in ELT, no, English language teaching. It's more of the immersion. Okay, so immersion. This is, our students will immerse in a community where English language speakers, like the native speakers, will, they are acquainted with our speakers. Like there are schools or universities, I think also in Thailand, that they do allow immersions, like they do like what do you call this one? They allow their students to go to other countries like abroad or in Canada or in US, so that they will be fully immersed with that kind of setting. But of course, it's very expensive. So in the classroom setting, what I can actually just what I can suggest to you, because I know in Thailand, English subject is the only English subject that they have compared in the Philippines, right? Like our mathematics, our science is actually, these are all in English forms. So you surround them with, during your class or during your time, you surround them with materials, both audio visual materials, okay, that will really expose our students to these kind of materials. Because I'm not sure in Thailand if what kind of variation, what kind of English are you trying to enhance, or to you really pattern to your students? It's like American English or British English, because I believe in Thailand, I think they are more on the British, no, because of the history of the English colonization, something like that. So regardless of what speaking English variation is, that you expose your students in a classroom where they will be able to listen, especially for listening skills. So they have to expose themselves about like movies, for American movies or British movies, and then you may apply, or you may have this kind of a policy that there should be an English only policy. Okay, although sometimes, some scholars would actually refute into that kind of idea because of the world Englishes and global Englishes. Okay, but if that's really your aim, because it depends on the school, it depends on the school, what is the main aim of these learners, and it doesn't really matter in the mind. So if they are really serious of regarding about that one, then you really have to talk to their parents and to the students that you are imploring, or that you are applying the kind of policy for them to be fully immersed in an English speaking environment, because there will be no other chance. There will be no other chance for them to speak in English except in your class. So let the stakeholders know and fully understand that you are doing it for their benefit, especially for the students. It might be so difficult, yes, because again, English is their foreign language. It's not their second language. But step by step, Sir Meads, I think there will be a development regarding that. So that can be a good point, Sir Migs, no, of an action research or a paper in your thesis, like how does immersion or immersion of English language materials, the exposure of the students significantly help the students to really improve their English speaking skills. So you may actually do the study about that if you're in your thesis writing. Especially in your case that you are teaching English in other country. There are a lot of studies, because if our English language is problematic or challenging in the Philippines, for sure you also the same, like double or like twice or thrice the challenging experience in your country, because English is their foreign language. There's Sir Mix. There are a lot of ways that you can actually do it. You may search on the English language ELT, no? Immersion, marami yan ng mga ano eh. Marami yan ng mga naka-embed regarding that. So you may try like one, two, or some of them and see. You do a study regarding that if is there really a significant difference to your students.
Yeah, so thank you, Sir Mix, for raising that, of course, relevant question. And of course, thank you also, Dr. Marlon, for addressing Sir Mix's concern. Okay, anyone here who has additional question, concern? And we know that Dr. Marlon is, of course, willing to share. So from Dr. Marlon's presentation and the additional presentation, we are being reminded of the importance of the multiple intelligences of our students. And that even though it's English, we can actually integrate singing, dancing, like that, because we have to, of course, address our students' learning styles. Not all are linguistic learners, even though they have English subjects. So that's really a good input, Sir Marlon. Okay, so from Sir Mig's question, I was also thinking about, it's really challenging for Sir Mix because he is teaching English as foreign language, unlike us in the Philippines. English is our second language. You know, our alphabet in Filipino alphabet is somehow alike or mostly alike to English, unlike in Thailand. Okay, so again, once again, I think wala na pong magtatanong. And I think they are, the presentation is enough for them to, advance their knowledge on English, especially on phonetics phonology. Okay, so with that, we thank you very much, Dr. Marlon, for spending your time to be with us this morning. I know that you are busy with your own coursework, and yet you are able to be with us today and help us be more effective and efficient English teachers. Okay?
It's always a pleasure and honor. I can't say no to Dr. Dino, who is a very good friend of mine. Right, Sir Dino? I really can't say no to Sir Dino. Yeah, he's a very good friend. Since 2000, ano ba yun? 2013 na do. So we are in one paper conference. We both presented in a national paper conference, no, in Ateneo de Naga, and our friendship started there until now. So yeah, Doc Dino, thank you very much for inviting.
Thank you, Doc Carl, for gracing the event. Thank you for sharing. I'm sure our participants learned a lot from what we have shared. So walang question. Kasi very comprehensive. Kaya si Doc Carl, very comprehensive yan mag-discuss.
Thank you po. Thank you, maraming salamat po.
Execution pa, Dr. Marlon, ano talagang kasi we know that the topic of phonology is really hard to teach dahil ang mga estudyante are somehow shy. They think that if it's about pronunciation, they would be laughed at, they would be awkward looking, like that. But yet you are really expressive on your presentation.
As a language teacher, kasi Ma'am Hani, we have to be imploring like theatrics. It's, we are in a theatrics presentation lagi for us to appear so engaging to our learners. Because if we will just be a traditional English teacher, like, okay, get one whole sheet of paper and spell these words, and these students of us, especially the Gen Z learners, they will not really appreciate us. For them, boring tayo. Pag ganun ang teaching pedagogy natin, nako, for sure. Ba yan si ma'am, si sir, di ba? Wala na bang iba? Ganun. So, the English language teaching is evolving, okay? Bear that in our minds and hearts, that ELT is really evolving, and we really have to adapt into that kind of evolution.
Yeah, thank you again, Dr. Marlon. So we know that you still have other appointments maybe, and yet also it's weekend. So to give you enough time to spend your, to have it with your family or friends and your own work, I before you before we proceed to the next presentation, I let us first award the certificate of appreciation to Dr. Marlon Pantillas. And so let us have Ma'am Emily magpantay to award the certificate of this certificate.
Good morning, everyone. Allow me to read the content of the certificate. Sacred Heart College of Lucena City Incorporated, members of Daughters of Charity, St. Louis de Marillac Educational System, PASCO accredited. This certificate of participation is given to Dr. Marlon S. Pantillas for actively participating in the international webinar series with the theme Phonetics and Phonology Foundation for Teaching and Speaking. With the theme Language in Context, Elevating ESL Teaching Skills in Literary Criticism and Linguistics, conducted by the Master of Arts in Education, English major, class of 2022, given the 16th day of July in the year of our Lord 2022 via Zoom, signed by Michael Sandino T. Andre, PhD, Assistant Professor to Sacred Heart College, Lucena Incorporated. How about a virtual applause for our resource speaker?
Thank you so much, everyone. Maraming salamat po. Thank you very much.
Dr. Marlon. So, ayan. We apologize on the name of the certificate. Actually, I should be appreciation or recognition. But yeah, it's obvious that we really are engrossed by your presentation, and we were not able to realize it's actually participation pala po na present. Okay, so
No
thank you
problem.
very much, Dr. Marlon. All right. So to proceed to the next speaker who would give us another bunch of knowledge about English, let us have Miss Leon Nario Florido to introduce as our next speaker.
Okay, so for our second speaker, she graduated Masters in Educational Management, Masters of Arts in Teaching Filipino, and Masters of Education in Administration and Supervision from Philippine Normal University. She took her Doctor of Education major in Teaching Filipino Language and Literature at the University of Nueva Cáceres in Naga City, Camarines Sur. Her subspecialization is research and management. She is a public school district supervisor in SDO Quezon, Jomalig District, and a part-time associate professor at Partido State University in Goa, Camarines Sur. She became a regional coordinator, editor, speaker in Aloysan publication. She was also awarded by the Komisyon sa Wikang Filipino, Region 5 and Surian ng Wikang Filipino as KWF Gawad Ulirang Guro 2019 national and regional level. Outstanding Research of the Philippines by Sentro ng Wika at Kultura, Pambansang Samahan ng mga Guro sa Wika at Kultura. In 2020, she is the most outstanding school paper advisor of the Philippines by the Asian Pacific Award Giving Body Incorporated. And last 2021, she was awarded an iconic outstanding research of the year and iconic book author awardee by the Institution for Research and International Alliance for Academic Integrity Asian Society of Teachers for research in Thailand. Please give visual applause to Dr. Sharon A. Villaverde.
Good morning, everyone. Wala pa po si Doc Sharon, so let me present her screen. Kita na po.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
po. Let's have the first slides.
Good morning, everyone. My topic for today is about applying literary criticism in teaching literature in ESL classroom. As the saying goes, our reaction to advertising is a form of literary criticism. It is said by Northrop Frye. But what really is literary criticism? But what really is literary criticism? According to Jani 2022, literary criticism is the comparison, analysis, interpretation, and/or evaluation of works of literature. According to Jani 2022, literary criticism is the comparison, analysis, interpretation, and/or evaluation of works of literature. It is also essentially an opinion supported by evidence relating to theme, style, setting, or historical or political context. It is also essentially literary criticism also includes discussion of the work content and integrate your ideas with other insights gained from research. Literary criticism may have a positive or a negative bias and may be a study of an individual piece of literature or an author's body of work. Literary criticism also includes Moreover, literary criticism is also the practice of studying, evaluating, and interpreting works of literature. Similar to literary theory, which provide a broader philosophical framework for how to analyze literature, literary criticism offers readers new ways to understand an author's work. Ito yung mga bahagi na hindi natin nakikita sa mga sinusulat nila. Reading between the lines using literary criticism includes historicism, queer theory, critical theory, and post-colonial theory. Moreover, literary criticism is also the practice of studying, evaluating, and interpreting works of literature. Similar to literary theory, which provide a broader philosophical framework for how to analyze literature, literary criticism offers readers new ways to understand an author's work. Ito yung mga bahagi na hindi natin nakikita sa mga sinusulat nila. Reading between the lines using literary criticism includes historicism, queer theory, critical theory, and post-colonial theory. Literary criticism may include some of the following elements in order to support an idea. Literary criticism is not a plot summary, a biography of the author, or simply finding fault with the literature. Researching, reading, and writing works of literary criticism will help you to make better sense of the work, form judgment about literature, study ideas from different points of view, and determine on an individual level whether a literary work is worth reading. The purpose of literary criticism is to broaden a reader's understanding of an author's work by summarizing, interpreting, and exploring its value. After giving the text a close reading, a critic formulates a comprehensive literary analysis that can inform or challenge another reader's understanding of the text. The practice of literary criticism creates space for readers to better understand the beauty and complexity of the world through literature. The purpose There are different types of literary criticism. So let us explore what are those. There are different types of literary criticism. So let us explore what are those. The first is historical biographical criticism. In this theory, it examines literature through the perspective of the author's historical content. This approach assumes that the significance of a particular piece of literature is inextricably linked to its historical content. For example, historical biographical critics evaluate Shakespeare's work with the context of English literature, history, and culture during the late 16th and early 17th centuries. The first is historical biographical. In the moral philosophical criticism, this literary criticism style approaches literature based on ethical merits. So moral philosophical critics evaluate literary works based on the moral statements and judgment the characters and authors express throughout the literary text. In the moral philosophical criticism, this literary criticism style approaches literature based on ethical merits. So moral philosophical critics evaluate literary works based on the moral statements and judgment the characters and authors express throughout the literary text. In sociological criticism, it evaluates literature based on its relationship to society. The sociological criticism method examines the author's status in the society as well as the effect from the literary work hold on its audience within the society. One form of sociological criticism is Marxist criticism, which examines how a specific work of literature affirms or rejects oppression within class system. In psychoanalytic criticism, it examines literature based on the psychological desires and neuroses of the characters within a particular piece of literature. So, psychoanalytic critics believe that an author's unconscious thoughts are expressed throughout their work. In psychoanalytic Moreover, in practical criticism, it encourages readers to examine the text without regard to any outside context, like the author, the date and place of writing, or any other contextual information that may enlighten the reader. In formalism, it compels readers to judge the artistic merit of literature by examining its formal elements like language and technical skills. Formalism favors a literary canon of works that exemplify the highest standard of literature as determined by formalist critics. Readers' response criticism rooted in the belief that a reader's reaction to an interpretation of a text is as valuable as a source of critical study as the text itself. So ito medyo common natin itong nakikita usually during the conduct after reading each book, meron tayong mga reader's response with regard to the evaluation of the text that you had just read. Immediate po ang reader's response. while in New Criticism, the new critics focused on examining the formal and structural elements of literature as opposed to the emotional or moral elements. Poet T.S. Eliot and critic Clint Brooks and John Crow Ramsden pioneered the approach in the mid-20th century. The post-structuralist literary criticism abandoned ideas of formal and structural cohesion, questioning any assumed universal truths as reliant on the social structure that influenced them. One of the writers who shaped post-structuralist is Roland Barthes, the father of semiotics, or the study of signs and symbols in arts. In deconstruction, as proposed by Jacques Derrida, deconstructionists pick apart a text's ideas or arguments, looking for contradictions that render any singular reading of a text impossible. In feminist criticism, which is very common for today, as the feminist movement gained steam in the mid-20th century, literary critics began looking to gender studies for new modes of literary criticism. One of the earliest proponents of feminist criticism was Virginia Woolf in her seminal essay, A Room of One's Own, and other notable feminist critics include Elaine Showalter and Helen Sitges. Let us explore the different theories of literary criticism. The first theory is expressive literary theory, which emphasizes the way in which the work expresses the author's personal concern. In pragmatic theory, it emphasizes the utility of art, how reading may positively affect the reader. The objective theory of literary criticism asserts that the work value has no necessarily dependence on any external factors, but rises from its own formal structure. Next is mimetic literary theory, which the word mimetic comes from the Greek word mimesis, the act of imitation. That is why mimetic theory of literary criticism places primarily importance on how well a literary works imitate life. Mimetic theory rejects expressive theory. In several ways, mimetic theory rises from its rejection of the three other theories. The writer's expression of personal concerns, although significant for expressive literary theory, does not in any way automatically qualify it as an art. If the concerns are petty or even criminal, then the work fails from the mimetic viewpoint because it does not reflect the positive moral values of true art. A work such as Jean Genet's The Maids, which described the brutal murder of a wealthy French woman by her maids, utterly fails from the mimetic viewpoint. In practice, mimetic critical theory offers us how well the literary works conveys universal truths and teaches the readers positive moral values and modes of personal conduct. While few would argue with positive moral values, the theory can be misused, such as justifying violence against those in disagreement. Mimesis theory versus pragmatic theory. In mimetic theory and pragmatic theory share the view that literature has the capacity for healing. However, mimetic theory emphasizes how this relates to the literary work conveyance of universal truth, while pragmatic theory puts more emphasis on the reader's response. For example, in mimetic theory, It emphasizes how literature's capacity for healing relates to the literary work's conveyance of the literary work, while pragmatic theory, on the other hand, emphasizes how the reader's response to the literary work's capacity for healing. The most significant difference between these two theories is where each theory finds value. For the mimetic theories, the value is inherent in the work of art. For example, the value of Shylock lies only secondarily in the effect it has on the reader. For the pragmatic theories, however, the way in which the work positively affects the reader is an essential aspect of its value. A close reading of Shylock, for example, might correct a reader's chauvinism and make her a more tolerant human being. From the mimetic viewpoint, art's primary concern is the representation of reality, but the unanswered question is who decides what is reality and what is not. In Soviet Russia, for example, not only writers but even composers were silenced and jailed because, in the view of the communist government, their works failed to accurately reflect positive social values. Shostakovich, one of Russia's greatest 20th century composers, was denounced by Joseph Stalin for writing symphonies that expressed Shostakovich's formal choices rather than promoting the proletarian values espoused by the regime. For the objectivist point of view, the formal choices, the objective reality of the composed work of art, are essential aspects of the work's artistic value. Whether they do not or do not incorporate songs as Stalin demanded is irrelevant. Postmodernism is more associated with art and literature, such as Terry Gilliam's postmodern film Brazil or Don DeLillo's postmodern novel White Noise. The difference between postmodernism and post-structuralism can be seen in how the two schools of thought view the self in relation to the world. In postmodernism, the concept of self is abandoned, and the individual becomes fragmented in a crowded, noisy world of endless data and competing ideas. The postmodern individual lets go of selfhood and engages in play. On the other hand, post-structuralism is more associated with theory and philosophy, especially the works of French theorists Michel Foucault and Jacques Derrida. Post-structuralism is based on the critical evaluation of texts, otherwise known as deconstructive theory, to expose cultural biases in the structure of language. Postmodernism and post-structuralism both describe theoretical movement in the late 20th century that focus on ideological structure of society and personal identity. In post-structuralism, the critical self becomes integrated with the world by accepting inherent contradictions in society, that is, by resisting ideology and only one mode of identity. This post-structuralist self never escapes the structure of society, but rather encompasses possibilities and a new awareness of diversity in interconnectedness. So, magkaiba po sila, no? Post-structuralism lingers with art and literature, while postmodernism engages in theory and philosophy. Feminist literary criticism is the critical analysis of literary works based on the feminist perspective. In particular, feminist literary critics tend to reject the patriarchal norms of literature that privileges masculine ways of thinking, points of view, and marginalizes women politically, economically, and psychologically. According to Paul Addy, Associate Professor of English of Assumption College in Worcester, Massachusetts. Historical issue of feminist approach to literary criticism. Modern feminist literary criticism had its root in the post-World War II feminist movement that spilled over the intellectual circles of America's colleges and universities. The true origin of the movement can be traced as far as back as the late 18th century with Mary Wollstonecraft, A Vindication of the Rights of Women in 1792. Other writers such as John Stuart Mill, Margaret Fuller, and Simone de Beauvoir followed suit from the mid-19th century to the mid-20th century. Other writers such as John Stuart Mill, Margaret Fuller, and Simone de Beauvoir followed suit from the mid-19th century to the mid-20th century. Another popular approach to feminist literary criticism is to examine closely what the text says, or as the case may be, does not say. In other words, what the text leaves out says much about the writer's literature in general and society as a whole. By using this hermeneutics of suspicion, literary critics hope to reveal how women are marginalized in the language of literature according to Addy. In some ways, this approach to literary criticism assumes that there is an unconscious transference of previously held assumptions to the text through the act of writing. In this sense, feminist literary criticism takes a particular stance against what the academic community has considered to be the norm for what it considers to be literature. The critique of traditional scholarship is an approach that rejects traditional norms on the assumption that traditional literary analysis has a political and ethical agenda based bias against women. For these reasons, like Josephine Donovan, hope to recapture the radical basis for feminist literary criticism by reinvigorating with both political and ethical components inherent in the conceptions of the movement. What is written reveals what society believes. It is influenced by the rise of postmodernism. Feminist literary critics believe that the act of writing is not neutral. Instead, it is influenced by the values of the writers, who then transfers those values to the text, often unintentionally. Benefits of literary criticism. Literary criticism expands your worldview. Literary criticism helps you better understand literature, and literary criticisms create opportunities for new style of writing.
Hi, this is Laura Turner, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to write a literary analysis paper. I've written lots and lots of these papers in my life, and I feel as though I can tell you many, many good things about it, so listen carefully. There are several ways to go about doing this, but you always want to start first with choosing a topic that actually interests you, something in the novel or the story that you find to be strange, that you find to be romantic, that you find to sort of touch you in some way. Otherwise, you are going to write a paper that is pretty bland and boring. So start off with a topic that interests you, and then start to write down all of your questions about this topic, why it interests you, what you want to get out of reading about other works that talk about this topic. And then what I would do is actually take the book and go through. This is The Sound and the Fury. For example, if I wanted to write a paper on why does Faulkner use so many different ways of narrating this novel, that's a really broad topic. I probably want to pare it down to why does Faulkner use italicized passages in this novel. That's something a little more specific. So not only choose something that interests you, but also something that is very specific, something that you can narrow down and latch onto. And so then go through the novel or the poem and actually write down, or type down all of the passages that you're going to need to construct your literary analysis paper. Number 2, go to the library or go online and find works by other people who've written about similar subjects as the one that you're writing about. And take down good examples from their writings and use them in your own, because it never hurts to figure out what other people think as well, to help you also legitimize your opinion and to back it up and to contrast it. So have a more varied paper rather than just your ideas. You'll have other people's ideas as well. Please do not summarize and explain your position in each paragraph. Take your opportunity at the beginning to write out your argument and then give your explanations, your examples in your body of your paragraphs, but don't sort of reiterate or summarize either the plot of the story or your argument in each paragraph. Okay, that would just seem like filler. And then finally, try to come to a compelling conclusion. You're not the only one who's written about this piece of work. You're not the last person who's going to write about it. So leave the reader with an idea that you know that there is more to come to be written about the literary work that you are analyzing.
Okay, so even though Dr. Sharon was not able to attend our webinar today because she was anyway trying and not to be with us today, but unfortunately the chance does not allow her. Okay, so still to proceed with our academic exchange, if anyone has something to say, something to add, or a question to, of course, to be talked by the group. Anyone? From Dr. Sharon's presentation. Okay, about literary criticism. So what do we have in a response?
Miss Honey, before we proceed to the questions of our participants, because I can see on our chat box that someone is asking for the request for the presentations or a copy of the speaker's presentation. Yeah, we would like to address that one also, that we're going to send the link or the recorded link. We are now on the recorded session. So we're going to send also this recorded link or recorded session with your certificate or your e-certificate to your email. So because the presentations will, I think we need to have some privacy when it comes to like the presentations or the materials for of the speakers for this time. But the recorded link or the recorded sessions will be sent to you through your email or via email. So I hope because it captures from the beginning until the end of the session. Yes, Miss Honey.
Okay, thank you, Sir Mix, for your reminder that yeah, we really should also respect the intellectual property of our dear speaker. So anyway, I think the recordings would do now for us to recall, to rewatch the session. Okay, so may I request the host to present the certificate for Dr. Sharon for or for documentation purposes. Okay, so this time is now certificate of recognition. So we're not pressured by Dr. Sharon's presence. Okay, so can I still request Ma'am Emily to please read the content of the certificate.
Good morning to once again. So allow me to read the content of the certificate again. Sacred Heart College of Lucena City Incorporated, 1 Merchant Street, Lucena City, 4301. Member, Daughters of Charity, St. Louis de Marillac Educational System, Pascal accredited. This certificate of recognition is given to Sharon A. Villaverde, EDD, for sharing her expertise and knowledge in applying literary criticism approaches in teaching literature in ESL classroom in a webinar series with the theme Language in Context, Elevating ESL Teaching Skills in Literary Criticism and Linguistics, conducted by the Master of Arts in Education, English major class of 2022, given the 16th day of July in the year of our Lord 2022 via Zoom, signed by Michael Sandino T. Andre, PhD, Assistant Professor to Sacred Heart College of Lucena Incorporated. A round of applause for our resource speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Emily. And so really, English teachers have a strategic competence. So we can really act like there's nothing wrong. So we know that. Okay, anyway, do we have po ba any inputs, responses on Dr. Sharon's presentation about literary criticism? So it's the only topic that focuses on literature. Okay. Yan, so mukhang the presentation is again enough for the participants to, have another knowledge. Okay, so really literature is a mirror of life, as what I learned from Dr. Sharon's presentation. And I really appreciate the effort of Dr. Sharon that she was able still to to make us feel that she is here with us in the meeting through her made presentation and the recordings. So for us, the participants and the English teacher who are teaching language and at the same time literature, so it's with us, it's in our hands on how we will be able to help our learners to get the meaning behind the words, the texts of the author. Because as we know, the meaning of literature, or the true meaning of literature, is in the mind of the authors. We do not know the true meaning behind their writings, but we are trying to get different interpretations, different meanings out of those words. And that's what are presented to us, how we will extract the hidden meanings behind literature. So to proceed to our next speaker, let us have on our virtual screen Sir Renzo Arvin Palma to give us the third speaker.
Thank you. Our third and last resource speaker is a trained social-cultural linguist. This amazing person is an openly gay Filipino researcher who interrogates issues concerning language, semiotics, and space-place making and their intersection with lived experiences such as gender and sexuality. He has published and presented papers on syntax, social linguistics, psycholinguistics, and critical discourse analysis at both national and international conferences and peer-reviewed Scopus Index journals. Currently, he is engaged in various book projects on language, gender, and sexuality issues under multilingual matters. He completed an accelerated straight doctorate degree in English as an international language, a 4-year program which he finished in 3 years, under various grants including the ASEAN Doctoral Scholarship, Special Training Assistantship, EIL Program Scholarship in Chulalongkorn University, Thailand. He is an outgoing lecturer at the School of Liberal Arts, King Mongkut's University of Technology, Thonburi, Bangkok, Thailand. and an incoming assistant professor of English linguistics at the National Taiwan University of Science and Technology. It is my greatest pleasure to present to all of you Dr. Joey Angel Lucena Santos. Let us give him a virtual applause.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
very.
Doc.
Okay. Hello, everyone. First of all, I want to thank Miguel for the very kind invitation, and I'm very much pleased to meet you all. I think my part is a little bit perhaps boring to a lot of people, and so I would apologize if it would be a little bit of such, but as you know, I have been a social linguist for quite a lot of time. And in terms of syntax, I worked on syntax when I was in my bachelor's degree, where I wrote a solo thesis on the syntactic formation of TV advertisements. But I'm more of a trained transformational generative grammar. But during my doctoral studies, I ventured on a little more different, which is the event structure syntax. I initially intend to do that, but I realized that the topic that you have provided is more of morphology and syntax. I'm quite afraid that I might get out of the scope, so I just stick to what you guys have asked me. But I think event structure is a culmination of semantics, pragmatics in syntactic theory. So if you guys would like to look into that syntactic theory, you may want to delve into it. But for this particular talk, I will not be delving into a very serious syntactic nor a morphological analysis, as it would take more than the hours we have dedicated for this. And I believe you guys have taken syntax, and I believe you would agree with me that a discussion on noun phrases, WH movement would even take 3 hours. So let's just talk about the tip of the iceberg here. So um, in this particular discussion, I will focus on generative approaches. I'm not gonna talk about the full length of it, but I'm just going to touch on issues revolving grammatical teaching. So it's not gonna be a pure theoretical talk, but it's more of how can we deduce let's say theoretical insights into teaching. So I'll just do an interface in this talk, and after that I'll proceed to the teaching of grammar, which is just very few slides, but I'll just try to echo and put everything together just so I could recapitulate it, and I'll provide a concluding statement. So once we talk about generative approaches, there are quite a lot. If you're going to ask how many grammars are there are more than 15. There is, mental grammar, there is cognitive grammar, there is, and there are also several approaches. You can talk about generative approaches, which is what most people call the Chomskyan approach or the Chomskyan grammar. And this is something that has been debatable, and a lot of people, even up until this date, are working hard to refute the arguments that Chomsky has presented in the past. Although his influence is undeniably important in the area of linguistics, particularly in morphology and syntax, as it gives birth to various approaches to grammar. But for this end, we'll look into what is actually, generative theory. This is something that is very crucial when you are a teacher and you are a researcher. When you look at a particular school, we call them school of theory, you would want to look at what is the backbone of that theory, or what is the departure point of the theory. Once we say departure point, we're looking at what influenced the theory to come about. In generative theory, it is strongly influenced by structural paradigms, which claims that language is learned through reinforcement and imitation. And this pretty much comes from old, or let's say traditional ways in teaching grammar. The most popular is grammar translation. When you try to give rules, and you even have patterns, you even have tables for students to fill in. So this is a reflection of this structural paradigm. So from that particular take-up point, there is now, let's say, a problem as to language is not fixed. Language is something that is alive and is generating different variations. And this is where Noam Chomsky comes in. When he looks into generative grammar, basically when grammar does not only operate in a very singular manner, that means when you say, what's this? Where is the venue? You do not say where is the venue as the only syntactic formation. You can even ask where the venue is at. And we know that from a traditional perspective, ending your sentence with a preposition is a notorious error in grammar teaching. But generative grammar gives us that facility to enable different formations of language. That means we're not just talking about statements, we're also able to generate WH movement. We're also able to talk about the deep structure, the surface structure. We're even looking at the topicalization. And so this generative grammar then operates as a grammar that has set of language rules that indicate structure and interpretation of sentences that native speakers of a language accept as belonging to their language. Now, this is very significant because I want to highlight this. And the very reason I quoted this is being Filipinos, being a non-native speakers of English, at least from the traditional perspective, we need to challenge always this claim as to how grammar is set forth to delimit our facility of language. And therefore, if you look at native speakers of language accept, you see a particular gatekeeping mechanism that this allows you as language speakers to create your own expressions. And this is very significant in grammar teaching because, and I will leave that at the concluding notes. Grammar is not something that is what we used to know, something that perhaps teachers would say, if it sounds right, it's grammatical. That's incorrect. That basically is coming from the native speaker's perspective. That means if the native speakers speak that way, hence it deems to be a grammatical sentence, and that is completely incorrect. And the reason I like this particular line is it opens up debates and argumentation on how can we assert the tools of syntax and morphology in establishing how this actually works, particularly how we use the language. And so once we look at generative grammar, it's a theory of grammar that holds that human language, and this is something I want you to put a lot of attention on, human language. That means if you're going to look at generative grammar from this perspective, it opens now the doors that have been gate kept by native speakers from the previous slides. And it is shaped by a set of basic principles that are part of the human brain. And therefore, we're looking at something that is more complex, something that requires understanding of human language. And from then on, grammar refers to the set of rules that structure a language, including syntax, that is the arrangement of words to form phrases and sentences, and morphology, the study of words and how they are formed. So from this particular theory of language, we can then clearly state that there are particular mechanisms that are involved in understanding language, and that those are the rules offered by syntax and morphology, not by the rules set forth by native speakers of English. And this is something that we will have to question quite a lot. Okay, so moving forward, when we talk about grammar, this is something that, let's say, a bit contested in various areas. While several scholars define a very clear distinction on what it is. As one, Larson, Freeman, and Celso Marcia defines it, and I quote, a set of rules that describes the structure of sentences or parts of them, end of quote. So this only tells you that grammaticality operates in the syntactic and the semantic level. I'm sorry, syntactic and the morphological level. And echoing this definition offered by Cohen in 2008, and I quote, a set of rules that describes how words and groups of words can be arranged to form sentences in a particular language. It is very important to mention that when we talk about grammar, it's not limited to, and again, I'm going out of scope, but I just want to make sure that I say this. But grammaticality does not operate alone in the morphological or syntactic level. Grammar is within the threshold of phonetics and phonology, morphology, syntax, and semantics. All of these make up the grammaticality of a language. And so one particular proposition offered as the architecture for grammar, and this is offered by Halpemath and Smith and Sims rather. That means we're looking at the meaning making that is operated within morphology, syntax, and phonology, which produces the sound. So this is coming from the brain forming to the head, forming the structures of the words, putting them together to a sentence level and articulating them. And this is how the grammar operates. And this is an architecture that puts together the lecture that you all put together for this particular webinar. It is very important to understand how these disciplines in linguistics come together to basically explain and put, let's say, shed light on what grammar is. But let's try to first look at morphology. So morphology is, let's say, one of the oldest property of linguistics, but it's also the youngest in terms of being a field in itself. That means we know morphology is part of linguistics, but as an area in itself, it is still quite young. Now, as various linguistics books define it, it is the internal structure of meaning. And while this pretty much encapsulates what morphology is, it becomes a controversial definition for reasons that it is ambiguous or it is too open. There are no limiting mechanisms that would allow us to fully define it. One proposal defined, or one proposal offered by Haspelmath and Sims is morphology is the systematic covariation in the form and meaning. That means when we look at this, we're looking at what we call the morphological analysis. And once we look at morphological analysis, we're looking at the different elements in in the word. So you have here nuts and dogs. So in the first one, you have nuts. So you have two particular elements. Number one is nut, and the inflection S, nuts. So looking at these two elements combined together, this internal structure of nut plus or base form nut plus inflection marker S brings us a pluralized form of nut. In the same way, dogs here has dog, the base form, plus the inflection marker S, therefore giving us a plural form of dog. So this particular way of analyzing it is what we call morphological analysis. From the morphological analysis standpoint, this is what we're looking at. What are the internal structure of the word? What are the elements that concern the formation of these words? And morphological analysis is actually one of, let's say, the core structure of generative grammar. And this is something that is very essential in teaching whenever we teach pluralization and singularization, and even how we look at the point of view, first person, second, or third. Another aspect is what we call morphemes or morphemic analysis. Once we look at morphological analysis, it definitely consists of identifiable parts, which we call constituents. So you have here what we mentioned, the nut plus the S, the dog plus the S, and these small units, that of the dog, the base form, and the S is what we call the morphemes, which is the smallest meaningful constituents of words. And once we look at this, we're looking at a morphemic analysis. We're trying to look at the morphemes as regards to what constituents a particular word structure. And the second proposal then offered by the same author, Haspel, Math, and Sims, is that morphology is the study of the combination of morphemes to yield words. That means once we look at morphology, it consists of several forms of analysis. Number one is when we look at the morphological analysis of it. And another is once we look at the morphemic analysis. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Once we look into the other aspects, it will become a lot clearer. So there are two particular parts you have to know when we talk about morphology. The very first one is inflectional morphology, which is the process that adapts existing words so that they function effectively in sentences without changing the category of the base morpheme. Basically, once we talk about inflectional morphology, if we're talking about dogs, if we're talking about run, we have a noun and a verb. And once we add inflectional markers such as S, for example, dogs becomes a pluralized form, which is still in the same category as a noun. Once we say run plus S, hence runs, indicates that it is a present verb, a present tense of the verb. So a present tense singular. So this tells you that from the base form verb run and the base form noun dog, they were able to retain their word category. So word category is the terminology that we use in linguistics to mean the parts of speech. Because in linguistics, there's no such thing as parts of speech. What we have is grammatical category, word classes, but there's no such thing as parts of speech. Parts of speech only exist in in the teaching of language, but not very much so in linguistics. So there are 8 different types of inflectional suffixes. Number 1, we have the suffix s, which functions in the present simple as the third person marking of the verb. So we have he work to he works. So we are able to retain the grammatical category of a verb, but while still keeping it even by adding s. Another is the suffix ed, which functions as the past simple as the past tense marker. For example, to love. So we have love as in loved. Another is the suffixes ed for regular verbs and en for some regular verbs function in the marking of the past participle and in general in the marking of the perfect aspect. So we have studied or eat, ate, eaten. Another is the ing, which functions in the marking of the present participle, the gerund, and in the marking of the continuous aspect. And therefore, we look at the ing in 2 different forms. One is when we talk about the verbal types, the verbal phrases, which is gerund, where the verb takes in a subject position, and the studying, the ing, which forms the continuous or what we call the progressive aspect. And while they are added, they still keep their they were able to still keep their own word category. The next is what we mentioned earlier, the pluralization of nouns. We also have the s or apostrophe s, which is a possessive marker. We have er and es. These are the gradability in adjective, which indicate a comparative and superlative degree. So these are the different 8 inflectional markers of morphology, which indicate that the base form of the word sticks or keeps its word category. If it is a noun, even having inflectional marker, it keeps its status being a noun. And this is a particular aspect of inflectional morphology. The opposite of changing is what we call derivational morphology. Derivational morphology is concerned with the way morphemes are connected to existing lexical forms as affixes. We have 2 particular types of affixes, although there is a third, which is in the mid. It pretty much exists in various languages, but not very much so in English, only in certain circumstances, which are not quite common. For example, bloody hell. If you wanted to have it inflicts it, we call it the infix, which exists in the middle, bloody Eula hell. So you just put it, but it's not really a formalized word per se, as it only exists in colloquial or even in just random expression made. And so we focus on the 2 affixes, which are the prefixes and suffixes. So pre meaning beginning and soft meaning it is towards the end. So you have the following lexical item: on, pre, post, this, and so on. So to better understand how this operates, let's look at this one. Yes, there is tree diagramming. I'm sure you guys are still hooked in the tree diagramming, but tree diagramming exists from morphology. I'm sorry, from phonology, morphology, syntax, and even semantics, particularly when you go the computational semantics level. But then again, this is one example of analyzing the derivational morphology. So you start with the base form, which is form, and this is a noun. By adding AL being formal, it now changes its category from noun to adjective. And from formal, we add ITY. And from adjective, it now becomes a noun. And from formality, we add a prefix in the beginning, making it informality, and still becomes a noun. So once we look at derivational morphology, we're looking at this particular tree diagram. What is the relevance of this? This is very important once you look at the meaning of the text. This is only, by the way, not the only one interpretation. There is another interpretation. We can start with in plus form, inform, and then from inform, we proceed with AL, informal, right? So there are two different ways to interpret it, but once we are able to provide what's this a morphological analysis in terms of exhibiting what is the internal structure of the word is, it becomes clearer. So we're trying to look at what is the real meaning of the text. This is something that I often tell to my students, particularly in Thailand when I taught to native English speakers. I would always argue that it's easy to memorize rules. That is one of the jobs of being a teacher, an English teacher at that. But being able to explicate the very depth of the internal structure of words, sounds, sentences, and even meaning is the skill set of a real English teacher. That means if you are not able to go beyond the surface level of the language, it would become very difficult to explain the meaning of the text. And therefore, instead of being a teacher, you will just become a mere duplication of textbooks that just basically recites the rules and do not make meaning out of it. So once we look at morphology, we now question ourselves, what is now the place of morphology? Those are just the basic parts, but what does it do in grammar teaching? Morphology offers insights into teaching the following, particularly in the inflections area. We were able to understand the relationship of number and words. And therefore, whenever we teach our students pluralization, singularization, we're able to introduce the very basic format, which is the base form plus the inflection, whether there's no S or plus S, right? So this is one of the things that we often do in grammar teaching. Another is the relationship of possessions and noun or possessives. How do we form possessives? Next is the relationship of point of view and the verb, particularly by adding S, it helps us to create the third person singular. Another is the relationship of tense and verb, specifically how we form past tense and past participle. And then the relationship of aspect and verb. And again, I'm not using tense here. I'm using the word aspect. This is very salient that in the English grammar, there are only two tenses. It's just the present and the past. All other things are what we call aspects. aspects, you will have your perfectives, you have your progressives, right? And you also employ degrees of modality to form future tenses. Although for teaching, and again, this is something I have to be very clear about. When we talk about linguistics and language teaching, it will always become different, particularly in terminologies used. Linguists would always claim there's no such thing as future tense, while teachers would have future tense. Remember, going back to the very takeoff point is we're looking at the structural paradigm. We're looking at imitations, we're looking at reinforcements. And therefore, the key area in incorporating linguistics insights into language teaching is to making it simpler for students to follow, and thus the use of patterns. That's the reason we have to make use of patterns for students to learn it. And if we're going to put it in a more theoretical sense, what we're trying to do in simplifying it is giving them insights into what's happening within the grammatical environment. And as they progress into their learning, we now attempt to change these terminologies to appropriate ones for them to best understand how the language works. And thus, as language teachers, it's very salient that we are able to understand the distinction and the differentiation of these terminologies, specifically once we look at linguistics and language teaching. Another, we have the gradability, the comparative, and the superlative degrees. So let's move now to something that is perhaps a lot of people least like, syntax. I would say that syntax is my first love. The very reason I pursued a language course is I was very much fascinated on tree diagrammings. It's something that I loved doing when I was in my undergrad years. That's why it is something that I pursued as my bachelor's thesis. Syntax is a branch of cognitive science whose goal is to describe and explain how human beings think. So once we look at syntax, it's not just a mere it's not just arrangement of words. It's not only how the subject is placed after the verb, or how the topicalization operates, or how do we put the adjuncts into different directions. It's not only that. It is also a frame of thinking as to which, what do we want to establish? What do we want to talk about? What do we want to put our attention on? And this is very significant once you look at syntax. And that is why there are a lot of theoretical insights that you can get from syntax, not only from generative one. What I mentioned earlier, event structure, is something I'm currently in love with as regards syntax. But in order for you to appreciate syntax, and I hope I do not sound patronizing, but syntax can be truly difficult, specifically if you talk about the tree diagrammings and interpreting how each tree operates, how the nodes operate. But if you're able to understand syntax in a more cognitive sense, that means, how does a person think? Why does a person makes use of a lot of sentence modifiers before the sentence itself? Why do we need to do a lot of relativization and couple it with so much adjuncts? These are intentional. These are intentional, or for some people, it could be unconscious way of framing messages. And so this is how syntax operates, at least from how Carney explains it. But another also explanation is offered, but the syntax is the part of grammar that pertains to a speaker's knowledge of sentences and their structures. I particularly like this definition, as it does not claim syntax is grammar. Syntax is part of grammar. And this is very important to understand. So once we look at syntax, it does not only operate within the brain as to how we think, it also tells us how knowledgeable the person is in the way he or she puts together strings of utterances to form different structures and sentences. So in syntax, one of the most famous concepts are the principles and parameters under the universal grammar of Noam Chomsky. And this is this is salient as it highlights what do we know and how do we manage our knowledge of syntax. We have the principles or the parameters. When we say principles, these are those set of finite fundamentals that are common to all languages. That means they have nouns, they have subjects. So these are quite common across. So this is the degree of universality that Chomsky is claiming. But once we say parameters, this is something that could only be defined the moment we zoom in to the syntactic structure of utterances. And there is this syntactic variability, which means in language, let me now talk in a grammar teacher's language. When we say parameters, we are talking about where is the verb, where is the noun in, for example, English or Tagalog or Bicol language. And we're looking into where is the position of it. And once we are aware, for example, I am a Tagalog speaker. I speak the Laguna Tagalog dialect. And therefore, I have a particular way of speaking Tagalog. That means there is variability in my utterances. And so if I wanted to learn English, there is now the setting that I need to do, or what Noam Chomsky calls the parameter setting. That means if you are aware of how the strings of utterances are positioned or structured, it's going to be easier for you to adjust it, to modify it in accordance to the target language. And these are now the significant contributions of syntax as regards the teaching of grammar. And so there are 4 particular features of syntax. One is constituency, hierarchical structure, linear word order, and syntactic categories. These are just some of the ways we can look at syntax. For example, we can look at linear order. You have John saw the winners. The winners saw John. In other words, we're just looking at each element appearing in a linear order. You have the noun, you have the verb, you have the noun phrase. You have the noun phrase, you have the noun, you have the verb, and you have the noun. So these are just basically showing you a plain order without an actual analysis yet. And now we move to what we call a hierarchical order. And this is pretty much something you all may probably have some nostalgia on, the hierarchical structure, the phrase structure diagram. So you have, for example, many students use the internet. So you start from the top. So you have sentence, and you have your obligatory constituents. You have the noun phrase, the verb phrase. You branch now to your determiners, noun phrases. You have your quantifier. You have your verb, article, and noun. So we're looking at hierarchical structure, meaning from bigger structure down to the smallest unit. Okay. Now we also have what we call constituency, or what we call square bracketing. This is very much common to the head phrase structure grammar, which is very much used in NLP studies, or the natural language processing. When we try to put them in brackets, so you have the NP, right? You have another N here. This is actually an NP. So if you're going to look at Brinton, then you will see, right? So the N, So you will see here the noun phrase good girls, we have an adjective plus a noun, and the plural marker, you have a conjunction and you have another plural noun. So this is square bracketing. So you look at these two, or you have the noun, the NP, and you have the AP. Of course, it will vary depending on your syntactic phrase structure. But once we say constituency, we put them in brackets to indicate the constituents. And we look at the sentence categories. The syntactic category. So you have the NPs, you have the VPs, you have the sentence or the S, you have the adjectival phrases, adjective, and so on. And once we talk about syntactic category, we normally have our major classes, our main categories, right? So these are some of the features of syntax. But the question is, after, and I'm definite that you all have taken your syntactic or your syntax. The question is, what does syntax do? Beyond tree diagramming, beyond knowing how the WH movement, how optional and obligatory constituents operate, what does syntax do? So Shejilniak 2015 offered a very clear discussion of introductory book on syntax, and I take this material from him. In his book, he talks about what does syntax do. And sorry, I think I lost my T there. So the rules of syntax combines words into phrases and phrases into sentences. That means once we look at syntax, it helps us to understand how each constituent make up a new string of expressions. For example, they specify the correct word order for a language. For example, in English, we use the SVO pattern or the subject verb object pattern. And you would also have here the president nominated a new Supreme Court justice versus the president the new Supreme Court nominated. What's the problem here? The problem here is that it does not follow the subject, the verb, and the object pattern. So once we look at syntax, it helps us to understand whether a string of sentences are well-formed or ill-formed, which is indicated by your asterisks. So we look at a particular word order to determine whether or not the words or the strings of utterances follow a particular structure. They also describe the relationship between the meaning of a group of words and the arrangement of the words. I mean what I say what I mean. Anybody can any one of you tell me the difference between the two? When we say I mean what I say versus I say what I mean. Anyone? You could unmute yourself or you could put your answer on the chat. Let me just fix mine. Anyone who would like to, oh, hold on. What is the difference between the two? Okay, go ahead. Someone is raising his hand. Yes, Luis, or her hand rather.
Hi, Dr. Joey.
Oh, hi, Luis, that's you.
Yes, it's me. So I just want to share my thoughts on this. I mean what I say versus I say what I mean. So the first sentence, I mean what I say, it comes to me like this, like whatever I said in that particular situation is I really intended to say that. And then I say what I mean. It means that at any given time, I always intend to say something that I like. There's an intention to say um, something that I really mean.
Good. Yeah, that's correct. Thank you, Luis. Yeah. So from that explanation, you could actually tell, you could actually vouch what Carney mentioned earlier. When we talk about syntax, it's not just about putting them in order, but also knowing the intention of the speaker, knowing about the knowledge of the speaker. Basically, I mean what I say versus I say what I mean. Okay. Another, syntactic rules also tells us how words form groups and are hierarchically ordered in a sentence. So we have the captain ordered the old men and women off the ship. So if we're going to look at this, there are two possible meanings. Number one, the captain ordered the old men and the old women off the ship. Number two, the captain ordered the old men and the women of any age off the ship. So if you're going to look at this, we can see this in a more tree diagramming. If you can see here, what is the difference of the adjuncts positioning and the different meanings there is. So once we look at it closely, the meanings depend on how the words in the sentence are grouped. Specifically, to which words is the adjective old. So you have the captain ordered the old men off the ship, or the captain ordered the old men and women off the ship. So on the first one, we can say that old pertains to both. Yeah? So you have old women, old men, old women. But on the second one, we have bracketed old men and women, and therefore this could pertain to any age, as it's not indicated whether it is old or not, in comparison to the first old men. So this is what syntax does to help us understand the deeper structure or the deeper meaning of sentences. Another is the rules of syntax also specify the grammatical relations of a sentence, such as the subject and the direct object. So you have your dog chased my cat. My cat chased the dog. So it gives us an understanding on who does the chasing and who was chased. So the relationship of the subject and the direct object is clearly understood through syntax. Another is syntax rules specify constraints on sentences based on the verb of the sentence. For example, the boy found in the house. Why do you think the boy found is incorrect? Anyone who would like to answer, why is it incorrect? What kind of, go ahead, Louise.
The boy found is incomplete. I think the word found verb is I forgot the term transitive,
Very
intransitive
good.
or transitive.
Transitive, right. Thank you.
Transitive.
Right.
Dr. Joey, may I just ask something? It's from your previous slide. The previous slide says there could be in the last part, the captain ordered the old men and women off the ship. Now, as a language teacher, how can I explain this to my students in a simpler manner? Say, for example, like do I really need to put the brackets in the right place for them to be able to understand and for me to clarify my thoughts or the intended meaning of the sentence? Or will I just give them the freedom to interpret it by themselves?
Mm. There are two different ways to do it. Number one, this is more of what I will be saying earlier. I'll be sharing later. But when you look at the context, when we say context, we're not limited to the physical context. It could be the linguistic context. For example, if this sentence is part of a paragraph, for example, you can use the linguistic context to explain the interpretation. Number two, if that is unavailable, if there's no such linguistic context available, then you can operate on by just showing two possible meaning. For example, you can play by the rules if you are talking to young learners. For example, we know that an adjective, right, describes a noun, and therefore using old as an adjective, it operates to define the two nouns occurring in this particular phrase. So you could just say, this means that the captain ordered both all the women and men off the ship. So that's the first interpretation in the second approach of doing it, by playing by the rules. Another is you can also play by the rules in terms of um, raising questions as regards to how old are the people involved. So people would say that oh, it is old men and women, and they would see and here as a separator, something that divides the two element, because it's a coordinate conjunction. It puts together, meaning they're both animate objects. However, you wanted to clearly state that within this frame, there is an adjective, but in this frame, there is none. Is it safe to assume that women in this particular one is also old? You can raise these questions, but the thing is, if they are younger adults, I would suggest you go with the first approach under the second, the first style in the second approach, which in you play by the rules. That is adjective describing nouns. And therefore, since it appears before the noun, and therefore it claims jurisdiction of the two other nouns occurring after it, and therefore it's referring to both old men and old women. But if your students are quite let's say high school or senior high school, then you can raise such arguments. But if they are just elementary, you can stop at the first level. It will really depend on who you're speaking to, the context of the study, and also how much facility can you accommodate to your students.
Thank you, Dr. Joey.
Yeah, so perhaps for a normal grammar class you can, but for a linguistics class, that's probably when it is imperative. So for a normal language class to young learners, it could be optional. Okay, thank you. So yeah, so going back to this is what we call monotransitive. Monotransitive only requires one object. In this case, the boy found. It is ungrammatical because found being a monotransitive requires an object, and the absence of none deems incorrect. In the same way, although there is in the house, this is not an object. This is a prepositional phrase indicating the adverb of place, and therefore it is not also correct. This could work if we are talking about intransitive, but we have the boy found the ball soundly. This becomes correct. In the same way, Disa slept the baby. Slept here, in contrast to the first one, is an intransitive, and therefore it does not require an object, thus making this incorrect. So we should have Disa slept. Okay, so syntactic rules allow us to understand the constraints, the limitations of each. Another is these groupings, oh sorry, this is the this is the previous slide. The groupings shown hierarchical tree. So you have the old men and women, old men and women. So this is what I was talking about earlier to what I was sharing to Luis. If you wanted to show it, assuming you have, let's say, high school students or senior high school students, and you want to give them depth in teaching grammar. So you may want to create a more hierarchical approach for them to see what does it look like. What I mentioned earlier is old claiming jurisdiction in describing the two nouns, men and women, while the other, it only creates a limited jurisdiction within the word directly being modified or being described. And hence the other one is left free from adjective. Right, right. This is correct, Miss Honey. Thank you. This is a very good insight that you've shared. So she said, yes, the situational context and linguistic context. I think it is better if we first ask our learners their understanding on the sentence so we can assess what they know and what else we need to say afterward. This adds to promoting constructivism approach. So there you go. So you are now adding another layer. Very good. So going forward, so these trees reveal structural ambiguity in the phrase old men and women because each structure corresponds to a different meaning. Structural ambiguous sentences can often be numerous. Watch out for the guys. He's a great fastball hitter. No problem. There's no way I've got a great fastball. So you have two different meaning from a syntactically ambiguous sentences, which can often be used for humor. But let's now talk about something that Hani actually touched upon earlier. And this is the 3 dimensions of language of Larson, Freeman, and Celso Murcia. When you talk about grammar teaching now, of course, we only constrained our my talk in this area, which is form. If you're now going to your main topic, in your main theme, teaching in the context, it's very significant to understand what is the different factors involved in language learning, particularly language teaching, the tripartite, as what they call it. Form constitutes to your syntax, to your morphology, to your phonetics, but it is not the only way to learn. It's not the only way to understand language. This means that whenever you look at language, you have to understand that. Again, I want to go back to Carney's definition. Syntax allows you to look at how the brain operates and how they are interconnected. And therefore, once they're interconnected, we can now see how the structures are defined. This is now the takeoff point of the interface of semantics, which means based on these combinations, what kind of meaning is being provided. Now we now provide to the from the semantics of the language use. And we now look at what are the possible meanings that we can derive from it. And we now operate on the pragmatics and even social linguistic of it, when to use it and when not to use it. In other words, this is what we look at in language teaching, particularly if we want to operate on context. We want to look at P for physical context and L for linguistic context. That means we are in a party. Do we need to speak in a formal register? So we're looking at the place as a context. Or just like earlier, we look at the linguistic context. So in order to best understand language teaching, particularly in grammar, it's significant to always refer back to the 3 dimensions of it. Do not just seclude yourself into the form, but also look into the meaning and the use of it. And this is something that I actually want to highlight. And this is something we fear about, I mean, at least for myself, math. Teaching grammar is like math. First, as a teacher, it's important that you master the rules. The rules are not limited to the subject and verb agreement, to the pronoun antecedent. It's important to understand the insights that is offered by linguistics. That is when you're able to understand the complexity of language. And when you understand the complexity of language, it's easier to make it now simple because you know the ways around it. And therefore, it is essential when you are doing when you're teaching grammar. Another is analyzing grammatical structures in different levels is salient in arriving at a clear comprehension of grammar. And this is what we were able to see earlier when you look at how do we understand a particular string of utterance? How can we make the analysis more explicit? Of course, this is very much plausible if you are trained in syntax, particularly in tree diagramming. But the crucial point is not the tree diagramming, but how to explain the relationship of each constituents and how the movements take place and why such movement is necessary. This is something that I often try to discourage people to do not start and end with labels. It's important that I think Honey mentioned that earlier. You ask what do students understand at this point? What do they know now from the structure they are presented to? And that's when you draw strategies in teaching. You do not always assume they know nothing. That is when you stop their linguistic creativity, linguistic curiosity to fire up. That's the last thing that you want to do. So when you try to present something, do not shut down students by saying that's not correct. That's not correct. You have to target where the student is coming from. Where is the meaning making process residing? Only then you can help the students, and I will use the word of Chomsky, to set the parameters into the target language. And so this is something that we shouldn't start and end with. And this is something I want to highlight. Being a social cultural linguist, there has to be a human factor in syntax. I know that syntax could be alienating at times, particularly grammar, but you wanted to understand what's the intention of the person. And this is reflected on the example earlier. I say what I mean and I mean what I say. The human factor is what reason does the student have in saying such utterances? And by understanding this, you're able to navigate through the linguistic resources that the students have and to carefully set the parameters without shutting down the student. And therefore, they get to understand not only one dimension, but several dimensions of meaning making because the human factor is part of the process. And this is something that, before we go to your question, this is something that I want us to remember what Shezhonyak said, that grammaticality is not based on prior exposure to a sentence. That means if you have learned this particular structure doesn't mean it cuts across different constructions. It is always upon variability. It's always upon syntactic variability. Another is grammaticality is not based on meaningfulness. There can be some there can be some structures that are not very much meaningful, but nonetheless they exist. But nonetheless they are used. And grammaticality is not based on truthfulness. Grammaticality can be just meaningful, meaning they are strategically I think that's the better term, strategically put together to serve, and I go back to that term, the human factor, to serve the human intention of the speaker. So with that, you can go ahead and ask your question.
All right. Sir Joey is already inviting us to ask questions, say responses, what we learned or what we want to know more about his presentation. So everybody's welcome. Dr. Joey mentioned before he started his presentation that it might be boring, but actually, from the silence of the participants, Sir Joey, I think you have put them into silence thinking about, wow, English is really amazing, no matter how complicated it is. But since we are here, so like we are dedicated to really immerse ourselves into the deeper area of English.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's the danger. I have a very serious problem when I talk about syntax because I teach syntax for teachers and syntax for linguistic students. And it could be very boring. So at the end of the class, I'm the one enjoying and they are just about to fall asleep. But there has to be a different way to do it. But I think if you guys are into syntax, I want you to look up event structure syntax. I think you will like it more. It's not as boring as you would look
Yes.
at generative because you can look at semantics and pragmatics incorporated in syntax. So yeah, you better look that up.
Okay, do we have here any participant, anyone, ma'am, sir, or if we have students here?
Yes.
You know, Sir Joey, I personally, I am really interested in syntax and I feel you. I really feel your eagerness to to really teach us or advance our knowledge on morphology, on syntax and semantics. And I was really looking closely at your presentation. Like I really want to know how a teacher teaching in the other country would share to us in here in the Philippines. And for me, I was always reminded in every presentation, I think in every slide, I was reminded that really uh, sometimes we are judged on how we create sentence or construct sentence, but actually because of the other principle and parameter, that it's relative. The grammar is relative depending on the context or place. So we should really be aware of the nature of a language of one's person before we tell them or him or her that, oh, you are ungrammatical or your sentence is ungrammatical.
Right, right. I mean, to share my experience with that, whenever I teach grammar, for example, for non-linguistics, non-language majors, I teach grammar in a more human factor way. So when I say, for example, when I teach tenses, for example, what do you want to say? Do you mean what happened in the past is important to be discussed today? Then you have to use perfectives. If what happened in the past is relevant to the future, then we use it. Are you still doing it right now? Then perhaps we need a progressive aspects. So instead of fronting the labels, you look at the function and the purpose of the language. And that is when students are like, oh yeah. And what I based on my experience, apart from teaching in the university, I also do like tutoring, primarily on writing, analytical writing. But whenever I teach grammar, I try to ask them a lot of questions. What do you think is the anticipated response if this is the sentence? In other words, when you are teaching grammar, it's not a one-way street that you only concern on how you want to be understood. Sorry, how you want to present yourself. but you also want it to how you will be understood. That means what is the impact of your statements to your listeners and even to your readers. In that sense, and this is within constructivism, there is the co-construction of meaning. You cut yourself into identities. One as someone who designs or the architect of the language, and the other one is the consumer, even the reader or the recipient of the language. That way it goes full swing. That is when you talk about, what's that? Meta-analysis. When you talk about metacognition, you reach the deeper sense of it, that why are you saying it? And going back to the other point, when like whenever I teach syntax, especially to native English speakers, because if you will see me in person, and Migs could attest, I look like someone who can be easily bullied. I'm slim. I am somehow tall and pretty. No, I'm kidding. So I am slim and tall, and then people and with a meek personality in class, so they would always assume it's easy. So when I was teaching syntax, they would always try to test me on the degree of knowledge I have. And whenever I am confronted with such question, and because that was my bachelor's thesis, I read the grammar book of Mercia and Freeman. I would always tell them that, okay, if you're in doubt, go to page 97, I'm there. And they would just go to page 97 and I'm actually there. And whenever they try to assert their nativeness of the language, I assert what the text says, because I would always counterclaim, your people wrote that. I didn't. So don't argue with me. Don't shoot the messenger. And there was one point when, because they are language teachers, I had them analyze a poetry, a nursery rhyme, doing a syntactic tree on it and explain it. And half of them were crying in that class. So they learned the lesson not to mess up with an Asian teacher. So I think that's one thing we have to understand, that being a non-native English speaker teacher is very salient, because our role, our identity is pushed to the wall to memorize these concepts and understand how they operate. And if we fail to do that basic premise, we might miss our chance in becoming language teachers. So that's a conscious effort that we'd always have to make. And our answers should always be on top of our head, or at least we know where to find them.
All right. Yes.
Medyo.
Thank you, Dr. Joey. Thank you, Miss Honey, for that one too. Like, yeah, I will agree on that one, Dr. Joey. Dr. Joey is like one of my closest friends here in Thailand, and like he's a very, very, very much slim and pretty. I will agree on that one, Doc. But yeah, in connection to what Dr. Joey is telling us, like we Filipinos, like we really focus when it comes to like the grammar thing, right? So we're just like, oh, you got the wrong grammar. We have this kind of culture, like every when you hear that kind of wrong grammar thing, it's just like we need automatically checked, right? That is our behavior, and that's the way we handle the language. However, when you move out from the Philippines, and like when you stay outside of the country, you will understand like it should not be like that, because there are some concerns that you need to focus on. Like in my based on my experience, like I also tell to my students, like it's not about the grammar thing, because you need to put the context or what you would like to say, right? But here in Thailand, they're more focused with the grammar, and somehow they're focused also with the accent. So that's why most of the school were probably hired white people or the native English speakers rather than the Filipinos. But actually inside of the classroom, who is the one who is teaching is the Filipino one. Yes, the backbone actually is the Filipino one. They are just only on the front for the marketing. Yeah, and I will like very agree on that one, Dr. Joey. Yes, thank you so much for the wonderful opportunity, Dr. Joey. It's a very, very much fruitful presentation, and like really, really happy to see you on screen. Not in the person, but I will see you in person. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Joey.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks. I hope you all well in your studies. But yeah, I'm more of a social cultural linguist now. So my area is more of humans and language. So yeah, just feel free to reach out whenever you have any questions. My Instagram is my IG, my Twitter rather is there, and my email is there. Just feel free to reach me out if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Joey. Expect me to be the one who follow up on you. Yeah, because I'm really interested in your topic, and I'm excited to know more about yeah, what you are teaching there. And no, but I'm not planning to to go abroad. It's just like I really amazed and interested. Okay. And that's something that I'm very grateful about this morning. Okay, thank you for extending your knowledge with us, Dr. Joey. So let us, of course, have this recognition to you, our certificate. Host, kindly share certificate. Okay, so once again, may I invite Ma'am Emily Magpantay to read the content of the certificate of recognition.
Good morning once again. So let me read the content of the Certificate of Recognition, Sacred Heart College of Lucena City Incorporated, 1 Merchant Street, Lucena City, 401, members of Daughters of Charity, and St. Louis de Marillac Educational System. This certificate of recognition is given to Joey Andrew L. Santos, PhD, for sharing his expertise and knowledge in morphology and syntax, the cornerstone in teaching grammar in a webinar series with the theme Language in Context, Elevating ESL Teaching Skills in Literary Criticism and Linguistics, conducted by the Master of Arts in Education English major class of 2022, given the 16th day of July in the year of our Lord 2022 via Zoom, signed by Michael Sandino T. Andre, PhD, Assistant Professor 2. How about a virtual applause for our last speaker? Thank you.
Let's receive your virtual certificate, Dr. Joey. Okay, so I know we will be sending you a copy of this. Okay. Okay, so once again, we extend our gratitude to our three speakers who have shared their valuable knowledge on linguistics and literary criticism. And this time, of course, before we officially end our virtual meeting, please be reminded to answer the evaluation form for you to receive your certificate. Okay, so this is one of the most awaited moments of our webinar. We will be hearing the closing message of one of the responsible persons in the realization of this event. So may we hear and may we invite on our virtual scheme, Sir Miguel Ezequiel Hineblazo for the closing message.
Thank you, Miss Honey. So, yeah, it's been a pleasure being with all of you today, and I'm very, very much thankful. It's like I'm using like repeating words very, very all right, because like I'm so overwhelmed, and I'm very happy because we have a lot of participants coming from the different countries or different parts of the world. So we have I think Miss Louise is from Abu Dhabi. We have from Japan, and of course from Thailand, Sir Philip, right? I think so. Yes. So thank you so much, everyone, for it. So I observed the excellent presentation and active discussion among our speakers, namely Dr. Marlon Pontillas from Camarines Sur Polytechnic College, Dr. Sharon Villaverde from the Department of Education, Quezon District, and Dr. Joey Andrew Santos from King Mongkut University of Technology, Bangkok, Thailand. Therefore, I can conclude that the purpose of this webinar has been completely accomplished. Also, I would like to use this opportunity to thank our dear participants. Without your interest, queries, and participation, this workshop would not have been the success it has. I hope that what you've learned through the webinar will help you a lot in many aspects of life, especially elevating our young generations using an effective teaching skills in literary criticism and linguistics. Finally, on behalf of Sacred Heart, Master of Arts in Education, major in English graduate school students, I would like to express my appreciation to all of the participants, speakers, committee, and of course, to our dear professor, Dr. Dino Andre, for your support. I would like to close my remarks and officially announce the end of the webinar session, wishing you all the best. And with that, thank you for your attention. Stay safe. Have a great day ahead. Kopon krap. Salamat po. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Sir Miguel. So may I invite, or maybe invite the participants to please open their cameras for our photo documentation. Okay, I can see that not all are opening their cameras yet. So is the best time for us to show ourselves, show our smiles that we have again, we have added up knowledge on our, prior knowledge about English. And we're on time. It's 11:57 a.m. It's great.
Dalawang slide po to. First slide po muna tayo. 1, 2, 3. Wait lang kasi. Second slide po. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Okay, thank you so much. Okay na po.
Okay, again, I think Miss Honey Miss Honey is still there. Yeah, thank you so much. From our, like, I'm reading the chat box right now. So like, yes, Dr. Dina, thank you so much. And Dr. Dina is also expressing his thank you to everyone. Thank you also, Miss Marilyn, Miss Rochelle. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Miss Honey?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much to our dear participants. So may we be reminded, maybe bring out in our classrooms or anywhere if we are still working at home, that let's remember that the knowledge that we have again learned in this webinar would be put or imparted to our students. Let's remember that they are not actually empty vessels to be filled in, but they are sparks and not to be lightened up, but to be like flames burning. Okay, so everyone, thank you very much. And I request that my classmates with Dr. Gino would stay in the Zoom meeting for further announcements and concerns.
All right, for
Thank
those
you.
participants, you may go. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day ahead.
Don't forget to fill out or answer the evaluation form for you to receive your certificate. And of course, kindly wait for our recording of the session so that, if you want to go back some parts of the session, you may. Thank you once again.
where they can find the